Hello everybody, welcome to our webinar. So today it's going to be a very special webinar because again we're blessed with the opportunity to work with Chaos and to be part of Chaos Campus. This is one of those quite amazing treats for me because this is not well, something usual. So right now I would like to say hello to both chats and on our YouTube and on Chaos Campus. So everybody, those of you that are interested in joining Chaos Campus, I would strongly advise you to go to that very special place, which is Facebook, and look for Chaos Campus. It's an amazing group that, well, I'm part of right now, and you should also try going there. Why? Because you're going to be able to learn from a lot of amazing artists, but also exchange knowledge with regular users like me and you. I mean, I was just in your position. I was starting at some point, and I believe that if I had Chaos Campus, I would be able to get to where I am way faster, and it would be a blast. Plus, you're going to have a little bit of a chance to exchange opinions on your own images, and as you can see, there's a variety of amazing works, not only professional, some of them are done by beginners, but this is what the Chaos Campus is all about. Learning and exchanging knowledge for free. This is the best thing ever. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Mike and I'm a teacher for Vizacademy, and as I've already mentioned, Chaos reached out to us and proposed that we take part in Chaos Campus. So today I'm going to be modeling one of the interiors, and our quick survey on both our Instagram and our Facebook revealed that this was the most anticipated interior. So we're going to be working with that. For better alignment, I'm going to need a bit of an epic pen to make sure that I can mark elements, and I see that the chat is really going on. Hello everybody. Hello Mikasa, nice to have you. I've got Eng, I've got Varoy, Onar, Liner. There's a lot of you guys today. I'm so glad to have you. Sir, I have been following your lessons for a week. You explain it very well on YouTube. I just started using 3ds Max and learned different perspectives. Onar, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Sound legit, Mike. Now, since I am legit now, we're going to continue by moving on to our actual work. So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about this interior. For some reason, and lucky for me, you chose this one, and to be honest, this was the second easiest interior, because this one is number one when it comes to the level of difficulty. This is level 2 and this was level 3, so lucky for me, I'm going to be working with medium difficulty, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun. What we're going to be dealing with is our students scene, which was created by Kamila Kosarzecka, and thank you very much for sharing this beautiful scene with us. This scene was created during our training, but this is beside the point, because today we're going to be dissecting the scene and building it from scratch. To make this possible for you viewers, we're going to be also sharing something quite cool, because you're all going to be able to download this pretty easy floor plan, but I did set up a few traps here, because in order to get all the measurements, you're going to have to follow my video, which is actually a nice trade-off. But let's get into it. I'm going to try to put as much knowledge in it as possible. Also, we're going to be talking about few elements. So, for example, how to create this type of lamp, because I believe we're going to be able to explore a few cool tricks. How to create wooden beams and how to make sure that your wooden elements do look a little bit used and a little bit more, well, let's say aged. On top of that, we're going to be building those funny chairs, and well, probably we're going to be building a lot, but I would like to put a disclaimer first that we're going to be also using some pre-made objects that you will also be able to download or find online. Now that is an awesome news, and congratulations, Tenebis. Thank you very much. By the way, Tenebis, there's more good news because now Vizacademy is actually an ATC, so we're Autodesk official accredited school, which is quite cool. And for those of you that thought that we're too cool for school, we're actually a school. So we're the opposite of cool, I guess. So let's get started. The first thing you're going to need is obviously 3ds Max. Because we're going to be working with this floor plan that I've shown you, I'm going to be guiding you step by step. Last time we did something that for beginners could be a bit confusing, so I want to guide you through this process with a little bit of small steps. Really exciting to be on the viewer side of a live stream session. First timer for me, come to think about it. Well, Theodore, we did have a little bit of experience with that before, but I'm really surprised to have you in my audience as well. It's actually quite cool. One thing that you all need to know about, and I think that Theodore specifically should get a little bit of recognition because he reached out to Chaos to create Chaos Campus. He pitched it, and they thought that this is a brilliant idea because Theo is actually a brilliant guy. So because of that, the Chaos Campus was created. By the way, guys, I would really appreciate if you could join Chaos Campus. I'm going to post a link to this group on our chat right now, so everybody can join in and pretty much be part of it. So if you want to, you can follow this link, and this is the event on Facebook. Join the group and have a little bit of fun with us. Okay, less talky, more clicky. So first thing we're going to be doing is analyzing what we're dealing with. And what we're dealing with is just a simple JPEG. Sometimes your clients are going to be sending you PDF files. And in that case, this is going to be a little bit different process. Let's assume that you're working with somebody professional. And most professionals are going to be slightly afraid of sending out their CAD files. I don't know what the idea behind it is, but some professionals do try to avoid it, and they send a little bit of a curveball by giving you this type of object. So what we need to do as the first thing is to just drag and drop the image to Photoshop or any other software that will allow you to save it, store it as JPEG. So long story short, this is what I would be doing. So Control-Shift-S to save it, and we're going to be saving it as JPEG. So it's one heck of a JPEG now. So let's save it all together, and we're done. So this is how we can change the PDF to JPEG. You're going to be getting both files, so I guess it's not going to be that much of a surprise to you. Oh, stop! It wasn't the campus, but keeping it realistic. Oh, sure. Sorry, Theodore. So not the campus, but the keep it realistic. Sorry for that, Theo. I don't want to oversell you, but still, I'm going to stand by the part where you're the awesome, you're an awesome guy. By the way, Mike, what tool do you use to write on images in real time? I mean, the pencil. So it's called Epic Pen, and this is how it looks like, and this is what I do. So you can use it as well. I am too lazy to set up any shortcuts for it, so that's why I am not getting any kind of faster clickies, but regardless, let's continue. So first thing we're going to be doing is dropping our image not as a background, but as an image on top of what we are dealing with. So I'm just going to be dropping it here. But the idea is that we're dropping it in order to use it as our backplate or template for what we're going to be building. So it is going to be a good idea to also read some specific information about the image itself. Sometimes you're not going to get this window, and and turning it on in some versions of Windows is not really fun. So the best thing you can do is hold your mouse for a second and get the dimensions, or right click on the image and go to properties. Security, no, details. We're going to go get the details, dimensions, so width and height in pixels. We're going to be using those in a second, so I'm just going to try to write them down on my in my 3ds Max. So length is going to be our height, so we're going to be typing in 3508 in my case, and we're going to be also going for 2479 because this is an A4 format. So for your convenience, so there's less guessing games, we've added this ruler here. So what we're going to be doing now is creating a box, and this is not the regular way you work with most architects, but I want to give you some basic knowledge so you don't have to look for something very elaborate when you will be starting. So now we're going to be adding the length, width, and this is 1 meter. So this 0 to 1 needs to be this size, and that's why we're going to be just using regular scaling tool. For that, I'm going to go to hierarchy, effect pivot only, center to the object, we don't need that, and we're going to be moving the pivot as close as we can to our box. Make sure that it's going to be on one of the corners, but don't go for atomic precision because nobody's going to be really caring about that. So let's make sure that we are close. I think I am going to rethink my life and quickly click that and go for the effect pivot only to adjust it a little bit further. So now we're going to be scaling it down, so up until I'm going to be satisfied. I'm pretty satisfied with what I've got, and remember, if your image is going to have 3 to 5% of imperfections, it's not going to be something that you can really see, and nobody's going to be able to really notice. What we're now doing is we're creating this image, so it's for those of you that just joined in. So okay, we've got, hi Mike, I'm from China. Now it's 1 a.m. Beijing time. How's China today? Sir, I watch your speech with subtitles later. I focus on your speech and the model ends suddenly. Okay, makes sense. So we're going to try to get some kind of software that will allow for the subtitles to be created on the well, during the live, but unfortunately right now we do not have the technology. Okay, we've got religious people again. Blender is the best. Yeah, and nobody asked, thank you. Now let's continue. Okay, so the first thing is a plane. Yeah, obviously. Oh, hello, Monique. Hi, how are you doing? So, why didn't you just snap it corner to a box? That is actually a very good question, because we're going to be introducing snap in a couple of seconds, because remember, we're trying to be beginner friendly as always. So I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a margin for mistakes, but we're also going to try to get better results. So hey, let's not start a religious war here, because Blender people really are vicious, and just read our comments. This is a gold mine, and I really love it. Blender is actually a good software, yes, but my software of choice is 3ds Max, so that's pretty much it. The thing we're going to be doing now is we're going to be tracing this this dashed line. So those are going to be our walls. For that, I'm going to go for plane, set the length segments and width segments to 1, and we're just going to be starting this way. Yes, I'm going to answer the question, Mike, why aren't you actually preparing this using lines? Because I want this geometry to be slightly pretty prepared for what I'm going to be doing to it later. So I'm just going to be stretching some elements, or we can just keep this fully quad like this. So I'm just going to turn on the visibility of my wireframe, and for the ease of use, because you can see that now when I was working with this element, it kind of gets glitchy at times. To avoid it, we can just pull our base image a little bit lower, so the floor plan is going to be approximately a few centimeters below Z0, and we're just going to be moving on. So quickly shift drag it, shift drag the edge. That is the one of the fastest ways of modeling in 3ds Max. Really, there are better tools than that, and I know that creating a spline would be already done, but as I mentioned, I want to keep this in quad because I will be doing some extra stuff to it later on. So now we're going to be just moving on, and you can see that we've got a funny situation here. So what should you do? Are you going to be just shift dragging and splitting it in half? That's going to create unnecessary geometry in your case. So feel free to just move this element a little bit to the top. That way you're going to be able to just move this downwards. And since you're here, you got two options. We're either going to be aligning those vertices perfectly by eyeballing them, which is going to be silly, or we can press R on our keyboard, go to select the uniform scale, and we're going to be scaling this down. By scaling it down at least twice, we're going to get to a point where it's essentially going to be just flat. Now we're going to be moving it slightly lower, and again, we're going to be shift dragging those elements. To ensure that I've got everything aligned, I can select all of the vertices and quickly just shift drag them to make them nice and flat, and repeat that process here. And we're going to just continue by shift dragging those elements in order to create the window. Okay, so I'm going to be going all the way to this point, and we're going to be continuing here, and probably also here. Okay, but I want to close those walls. How do we do that, right? So in normal circumstances, you're going to be able to just shift drag this, and then you're going to be welding those elements, which would be the correct way of doing it. But what you can also do is select the opposite edge and go for bridge. In this case, it's going to be nice and easy. By the way, guys, feel free to ask as many questions as you need, because this is for your education. So if you need some additional explanation of steps I'm taking, I would really be glad to help you out. Hello from Italy. Yes, Unreal Engine is also a great. Corona 12 support Chaos Vantage. I think that is a possibility, but I am not so sure because I haven't read any kind of info on that. But probably around 14, because Vantage is, let's say, getting there. It's good, it's getting better, but it's getting there. Hi sir, I'm from India. Hello, nice to have you in our chat. Thank you for that. Good morning from Philippines. Good morning to you too. Hello sir, hello. Now prepare your notebooks and pencils. I learn a lot. Gizem, hi, how are you? Now, first thing first, we're going to be now cutting a few corners. How do we do that? We're going to be adding shell modifier, and I'm going to show you something that will help you organize your scene, because this is going to be pretty much the recurring theme in most of your projects. At this stage, when we have all the walls pretty much traced, we're going to be able to select this border. So border selects everything on the edge of your object, so pretty much any open edges around the border of that polygon. So we're going to be selecting the outer border, create shape from selection, linear, and we're going to do the same for the inner part. So that way we're going to go for create shape from selection. And this is also going to make it a little bit clearer why we used the method that I did in a second, because we're cutting corners and we're saving a little bit of time. So now we're going to be getting to shell. We activate the shell, and typically, if I know how many windows I'm going to get, typically it's going to be just one opening for the windows, possibly for the doors. So you know that you're going to be needing those extra elements. And in order to make sure that no light is going to be shining through your building, what you can do is go for the outer amount and inner amount. So inner amount is going to be approximately 15. So we go below 0. So we're going to be digging our object a little bit deeper. And then we can go for the outer amount, which is going to be 420, which is 420 for those of you that are interested in that, but still, no, I'm just joking, sorry for that. Anyway, we're going to be adding 2 extra lines that will be very helpful. So 2 extra segments, and those are going to be our openings for the windows that are so important for this project. Typically, you're also going to have some kind of doorways, but we're only going to be focusing on the main shot itself. So we're creating one camera and we're going to be able to move it around a little bit. So we're going to be able to place it here if we want to look at everything that is in this vicinity, or we're going to be able to do a couple of close-ups for the props. But that's going to be handy a little bit later. So now we convert our object into editable poly, and we can start selecting the elements that we created earlier. And that's when those elements are going to be extremely useful. For this, I can recommend you to start using snap, and to set it up, right click on this number 3. In some cases, you can get 2, 2.5, and 3-dimensional snap. Please, if you are going to be rocking some other version of 3ds Max, hold your left mouse button, select the 3-dimensional snap, and then right click in this area. Vertex and midpoint, those are my settings. So if you want to work the same way I do in 3ds Max, go for it. But there are plenty of other very useful settings that you may want to go for. Then we're going to go for options, and here we absolutely have to enable access constraints, and this is a new element in 3ds Max 2024. Enable snap angle constraints, so that's helpful, I guess. Approximately 10 years too late. Let's go ahead and add extrude modifier to our object. So okay, let's type in something around 40, because that's going to be slightly less silly version of it. By the way, I forgot about one very important setting, and sorry for not doing this earlier, but make sure that you're working in some kind of units that make sense. In my case, I'm working with centimeters by centimeters, so please make sure to set it up. I set it up so many times during the webinars that this time I forgot to tell you, so that's pretty much it. I always use 2.5. 2.5 is actually good, but it limits how many axes you can use at a time, and sometimes it snaps in a funny way. But I'm sure that if you found this to be more comfortable, it's actually going to be working for you great. So now we're going to be copying this object, which is now going to be our ceiling, and Control V to copy it as again. Minus 40 for the object, and we're going to be placing that copy on -1 to make sure, or -2 actually, to make sure that our floor, as soon as it's going to be inside of our object, is going to be taken care of. And now you can see that we pretty much created a closed block. Why do we do it this way? Because first of all, we want to absolutely ensure that no light bleed is going to be happening, and by adding 2 separate objects, we're going to be making sure that no light is going to be passing through any of our geometry, which is fine, I guess. Now we're going to be selecting the edges. Please remember that the edges are also created inside of your mesh, so we're going to have to select all of them. Go to vertex selection, select everything you've got here, and we're going to be typing in -1. Why do we type -1? Because that's going to allow us to get a little bit easier floor detail in a second. So now we're going to go for this, and for that we're going to be typing 320 because that's how tall our windows are going to be. And now we can Control Q to make sure to do a little bit of trickery. So number 4, we select 2 polygons and shift drag them like this. For those of you that use a little bit older version of 3ds Max, you can do the exact same thing by selecting those 2 polygons and going for a bridge. This is essentially going to create the same effect, but the Swift modeling is actually a little bit easier if you're using a newer version of 3ds Max. Is this a full guide or gonna be part of part? I mean, we're going to try to do as much as we can tonight, but obviously it's all about centimeters for the win. Yes, that's exactly it. I know that some of the architects out there will say, nah, I'm not doing that. So you can work with millimeters, that there's no penalty for that. It's just that you should be aware what kind of units I'm using. You can see that there's a little bit of a glitching going on here on my model. That's due to unforeseen circumstances that I cannot explain. It's just the smoothing groups are acting up funny. So what we can do is go for element and just go a little bit lower, and here we've got all of the smoothing groups. In my case, I'm going to clear them all, and that is now problem solved. Amit, hello, nice to have you. How are you? It's full guide, or yeah. I hope I can create similar renderings like Mike one day. Well, there is a chance that if you're going to be following Chaos Campus and our YouTube channel, you can actually do that. So let's go ahead and show you another cool trick that I use all the time. You click on the top of your ceiling, go to Object Properties, and to make sure that it's not going to be getting in our way, we're going to be displaying it as box. In some cases, if you're going to be working with more complex scenes, you may also want to start using layers. In my case, because we want to keep it simple, I'm not going to be putting elements on layers, but since I mentioned it, it's that simple. New layer with object selected, and now I can just name it ceiling, and for example, freeze and unfreeze the whole thing. So in my case, it's going to be just an object that is frozen because it's working within the layer boundaries. So no longer can I select this element, so it is not going to be getting in my way, but I do know that I did create the element, and well, I'm good to go. So now we're going to be using the other shape that we also created earlier on. So this shape is going to be our floor. So let's rename it to floor 001 because we're going to be using this twice. So now I'm going to be selecting the edge. So press 2 on your keyboard, go here, and we're going to be shift dragging this a little bit deeper. That up until to the point where the windows are going to be placed. Why do we do that, and what do we do with this element? First of all, we're going to be putting it on -1 because this is going to be our main floor. And to create our main floor, we're going to be creating giving it a little bit of thickness. So, and to do that, we're going to first get a copy of it. Control V, copy, floor 002. The naming scheme is always going to be 001, 002. So if you're going to be outsmarting 3ds Max by pre-preparing your names with 000, it's going to just allow you to keep consistent numbering of your objects. So again, it's going to be a little bit easier. This is not something that you generally have to do, but if you're going to be working within a team, it's good to keep your scenes a little bit tidier than just, you know, random. So let's go for OK. And in this case, we're going to have our floor 002 automatically selected. Okay, so we're going to be going back to our floor number 1, and here we're going to be adding shell modifier to it. Why? Because we want to. First, we're going to be adding just a couple of millimeters to it, something around 0.8, to make sure that it's going to be nicely filled. Because in our case, we're going to be creating some nice floor for our object, and you can see that there are tiles, but also there's some kind of grounding between them, so that's going to be a type of concrete. But we also want to have this very nice effect around the edges to make sure that it's actually going to look more realistic and not ridiculous. So in that case, we're going to be going for the object that we also created, which is our floor 002. But now with all of those lines, this is getting a little bit cluttered. So this is the point where you can start using the layers if you want to, but if layers are not your style, you just press H on your keyboard, and this is the select from scenes or object color. So we're going to select the object 002. Now we're smart, so we know what that is, so we can select it, and it's easier for us to manipulate the whole scene. For the first time, I'm going to be also recommending you to get your hands on one of the plugins. It's free for you to download from CG Source. So this is the website, and go to CG Source and look for floor generator. installation process is absolutely the easiest thing ever, and the free version that we're going to be using is working with a standard running bond, and that's pretty much what we needed. I could also use Corona tile map, but setting it up in some cases is going to be more complicated for beginners than anything else. So in this case, I've already have the floor generator installed. So if you do need it installed, please make sure to pause the video, go get it done, and come back to us, because I mean, you're probably not tracing everything I do right now because it's probably going to be a bit too fast. Yeah, at some point when you will be working on your own scene, that's what you can do. Maximum length and maximum width is going to be set to something around 60, but it's all up to you at this point. And we're going to be also making sure that we're going to be using all the nice elements that we already pre-set up. So first of all, I'm going to be losing the bevel. I don't want this, but as you can see, we made sure that our main floor is going to be on -1. So we're extruding the tiles to be actually on +1. So in reality, the point which is reached by the top of those tiles is going to be 0 on the axis. Why is that important, or why am I so fixated on those values to begin with? Because all of the objects in 3ds Max will be created always on 0 unless we activate AutoGrid. And because it's easier to import objects, and most of the objects that you're going to be importing into 3ds Max will be starting their journey on 0 position. So instead of risking that your object is going to be slightly above the ground, or because in this ortho view, it's impossible to tell whether the object is on the ground or not unless you are actually going to be looking at a very certain angle. So in this case, if the values are going to be very small, it's really impossible to tell. So that is why to make sure that the tiles are going to be in the right position, we always try to make sure that our floor doesn't exceed 0. Unless you're going to have some carpets, that's going to be a little bit different story. So here we're going to go for the ground length, and we're just going to be adding some nice values. 3-4 centimeters is going to really do the job, but we also need to add the minimum offset of approximately 50%. You can also get the maximum and minimum, so it's going to get a little bit more random at times, because you can see that now the pattern is a little bit crazier, and this is going to be good for some scenes. I noticed that not a lot of people actually use this option. People just don't open those extra L's, and to get a W, you want to click on the L, so you get it's now no longer going to be a part of your scene. Hello from Afghanistan. Why the fudging see-through doesn't work? Why the funding see-through doesn't work? What do you mean? I'm not sure what you mean, really. Could you elaborate on that? Hello, Mike. I'm from Algeria. Nice to have you. Archlife, hi. How are you? Is Floor Generator working on 2025? I mean, I haven't tested it. I'm using 2024, and I'm probably going to be skipping 2025 for a while now, because I'm waiting for all of the updates on all the software that I use, because it usually takes approximately a month and a half to get all the software updated. And 2024 is actually a very good version, and I'm going to be sticking to it for a little bit longer. Plus, 2025 doesn't have any updates that I'm interested in. It actually is like, yeah, I just don't like it. There's nothing for me there. There's no reason for me to move. Can these gaps be made with texturing? Yes, they can, but you're not going to get the same flexibility as we're getting by using models and some kind of additional tools. I do? That's great. Make rendering lessons also, please. This is pretty much that. Hello, sir. Greetings from Turkey. Why not both? That's actually a good idea. So, hey Mike, a quick question. With floor generator, I have seen certain artists using chamfer modifier above the floor generator rather than using the bevel option inside of the floor generator. Any specific reason for that? And also, which method do you prefer? Thank you for that question, Amit. That is actually something that I would say, why not lose both? Not use both, lose both. Because now if it's only going to be a floor generator, by using chamfer, what you're going to be risking is gajillion billions polygons on your objects. Obviously, by using chamfer, you've got one extra level of complexity, and you can see that now I can actually melt the tiles inside of the floor, while before it was just a block. So that could be the reason why some people prefer to use it. But I personally don't use chamfer because in very complex scenes, it's going to cost you a lot of resources in your computer. What I prefer using instead is corona round edges. As we're going to be actually using it later on, I can actually prepare let's say a mock-up of the material to show you why I would be going for something like that. So corona round edges, and this is the chamfer, or what I would be using instead of chamfer. First of all, we're assuming that this is a tile. This is not an object that we're going to be viewing from for a close-up purposes. So since it's going to be just part of our scene and not the main element of it, we are allowed to go a little bit, well, we are allowed to not be as precise with everything whatsoever. So now, since we're here, I'm going to actually have to set up some kind of simple lighting. For that, I'm just going to go for a single map and type or add in Corona Sky. Later, we're going to be editing that, but for now, we're going to be able to get this done. So now the reason why you would not use chamfer is that, first of all, chamfer is going to be adding a lot of geometry. Bevel is always going to be very stiff, and it's going to create only one line, and corner around edges is going to be very flexible, and it's going to absolutely obliterate all of those options with one simple trick. I'm going to explain all of that in a sec once we reach the materials, but if we're going to create a very nice looking material, look how chipped the edges are on my tiles, and this is something that you cannot get with chamfer. And if I go a little bit further with my radius, let's go for something too big, something like 3 centimeters in my case, you can see that now, thanks to the trick I'm pulling off, we're getting very nicely chipped edges, just like people would be actually walking on those. And the best part of all of that is that this map is pretending to be melting those two objects together without the need of actually interfering with the geometry. So it's a win-win-win scenario, because we don't need to use bevel and we don't need to use chamfer at all, and it's going to be rendering for way fast. It's going to render way faster. So long story short, this is the right way of doing things, unless you're going for close-ups. Then you're not going to be that happy, because you probably want to use the chamfer. Okay, so now I'm going to be moving a little bit to the left, because I've noticed that I was a little bit on the edge of the screen. Mike's right, of course. If you want, thank you. Want to save resources and render time, and round edges is a great option. I'm just very much into small details, and this is why I tend to go with chamfer. It's just like I like it more. That's it. Because a lot of times it's not about the let's say calling the technique proper or not. It's just that sometimes you just feel more comfortable with something because you know how it works, you have more control over some aspects that you want to work with, and that's when you just select the technique that you feel more comfortable. After all, we're artists, so and we are not necessarily going to call everything just yeah, that is why we call our tricks techniques and tricks. So yeah, we're pretty much martial artists, but in 3ds Max and nerds in front of computers. Okay, got a little bit in a dead end there. Also thinking the same. Hello from the Egypt. Hello from India. Hello from South Korea. Sir, can you hide objects while working on one object? Yeah. So if you want to work on just one object at a time, there is a very easy way of doing this. So what you want to do is use this isolate selection. Isolate selection will allow you to pretty much just do exactly what you just said. What it really does, it hides all the objects in your scene that aren't currently selected. If you want to exit this, you want to Control Q again. In older versions of 3ds Max, for some reason you have to click it instead of use it again. Also, there's an option to set up different presets for what to hide, what to show, but I don't use it a lot, well, for the most part, I just don't. Okay, can you hide objects? Corona is better than V-Ray. Is Corona better than V-Ray? I wouldn't say that it's better. It's just more streamlined. Corona is one of those type of software. This is a type of program that when you open it, everything is quite clear. This is the reflection, this is the light. Go have fun. And typically, that's how Corona works, and this is how users interact with it. So it gives you a very broad spectrum of options to be creative. While V-Ray is also very simple at times, it also kind of lets you go a bit deeper into the numbers. And that's when you have to be a bit of an engineer, because you're going to be able to do more, optimize more, possibly even work faster. But before you reach that point, you're going to go through hell. And I mean it, because V-Ray can be very rewarding, but also is very punishing. I never had any kind of situation where I left my render overnight in Corona and it turned out that I used a wrong number of samples and the wrong anti-aliasing algorithm, and for that reason, that one element in my scene is absolutely messing up the whole render, and I only seen it on the second frame because the first one was perfect. This is V-Ray, while Corona is consistent, predictable, and very easy to work with. That is why I always will be choosing Corona, although I'm not saying that V-Ray is bad. It just requires you to be a bit of an engineer before you get good at it. So I guess this is the type of software of get good. Now, why don't you use the extrude for floor generator? Why we Edge don't use extrude for floor generator? We did use extrude for floor generator. In this case, you can see that I'm using it with a certain value to make sure that I'm going to be able to have full control over the tiles once I'm going to be setting them up, because I'm going to be doing more than just placing them. Mongolia, that's the first. I never had anybody from Mongolia in our chat, so thank you for joining, Nimba. I'm looking at you from Brno, Czech Republic. Oh, nice. Ludek, that's where Corona actually was created. Your seminars are the best. I haven't found a better one anywhere. Congratulations. Thank you, Ludek. I really appreciate that. That was absolutely out of nowhere. Thank you. And if you go to Prague, you can actually visit Chaos or Corona's main base and well, have a little bit of a tour there. I'm going to visit them at some point. Yes, we're going to move on to more modeling because definitely we're not modeling enough. So, windows. Windows in this image are very simple. Those are just boxes inside of boxes inside of boxes. So for that, we're going to be using one of the beautiful features of Corona, and we're going to be using Chaos Cosmos. I typically tend to use my own profiles for Windows, but I don't want to overcomplicate this whole build for you guys. So we're going to be just update now. Nope. Window. Thank you very much. So we're going to be just looking for a window in here. In most of the cases, the window of my choice is this one. I just like it. It looks good, and I use it for most of my scenes. It has a few flaws that I do not necessarily like, but it's actually very good. So what do we do with a window like this? We only want one window. So with 3 bars, we could just rotate it, but that's not what I want to do in this case. But actually, that would be a little bit smarter than anything else. So you know what? I'm just going to duplicate this to mesh. I'm still going to follow up on the idea I had in a second. Because if this is going to be problematic and you want to have only one frame, what you can do is go for a symmetry modifier. And instead of adding geometry to your model like this, you can actually reduce the geometry like that. But please be aware that symmetry is always going to be cutting with a certain slice threshold. So you want to probably turn that off and make sure to weld the seam because otherwise we're going to have a little bit of a bad time. So that's one of the things. So slice amount. So let's go for lower that. And you can see that now we're no longer welding the elements that we are not supposed to. So let's move this a little bit, and we now have just one frame. That's a very neat trick if you're going to ever need it. And now let's go ahead and continue. This window, I think, yeah, we can rotate it by 90 degrees. Nobody, I guess the window police is not going to come to Facebook, so we're just going to continue. Okay, so yeah, we're going to go with very cheesy puns. Okay, now, because I want this window to fit exactly where I want it, I'm going to just make sure to isolate those two elements. Since the object by default almost fits, I'm not going to be needing a lot of changes, but I'm going to make sure that it's placed a little bit inside of the wall. And now I only need to go to editable poly and move the element as much as I need in this case. And if I want to, I can follow up with any part of my window, but in this case I'm just going to make sure to move the elements under 1 and 2. So why am I not using snap again? Because I don't want to. It's really not going to be a good idea to always snap to every corner and every aspect of your model. Sometimes you want to allow objects to intersect, as you're going to gain a little bit more thanks to that. What are you gaining? Well, intersecting geometry in older versions of Corona and V-Ray were a big problem because sometimes some maps, some light could bleed through the walls. Today, the rendering engines are so sophisticated that it's no longer going to be that much of a problem. So I believe that it's actually better to leave it that way. Okay, looking at the floor plan, which is buried way deeper than I wanted, we're going to just hide the floor for a second, and you can see that, oh, there's another floor. There's another detail here. So this is a box that I'm going to be using as another detail in here. So you can see that this brick wall is very important for our build, so we kind of need to keep that in mind. So we're just going to create a box. Yes, that's how you can handle it. It doesn't have to grow out of your wall. It doesn't have to be part of the mesh. This can be a separate element, and that's going to be actually more convenient for us as we're going to be adding a bit more detail to it. So let's drag it up. In this case, I'm going to place it at somewhere around 330. Shift drag it to the top. Again, I can intersect through the walls, doesn't matter. And we're just going to go here. Because I want this to be symmetrical, I can make it symmetrical by just simply using symmetry modifier and going for that. Either go flip or make sure to rotate your mirror along the axis. So convert this object to editable poly, and the reason why we're holding this object as we are is that we're going to be adding a few extrusions here. So hi Mike, hope you are doing well. I really miss your course. Huda, hi, how are you? Life-changing investment. Oh my god, how are you doing? It's okay to tell us what is the newest force pack course contains. Well, I'm going to be able to give you more details later, but there's a lot of stuff coming up from Vizacademy, and well, Forest Pack is going to be pretty much the environments for every possible scenario. So more info later on. I don't want to spoil anything, so once it's ready, I'm going to be able to give you all the info. But as you mentioned, Huda, it's going to be worth it. Greetings from Serbia. Hi, nice. Okay, this I was talking about. Okay, wait a second. The video is an example of a detailed floor, and that is why the render RAM do this using a chamfer. Yeah, so probably that is it. So let's continue. By the way, let's create two lines, one here and one here. Again, we don't need to go for too much symmetry, but I want to now cut this element out. Normally, you would be going for delete and trying to chamfer all of that. I mean, bridge. But now in 3ds Max, we can be a bit lazier than that. Shift, drag, and voila, we're done. No welding is going to be needed, but please be aware that sometimes this technique can actually give you a few headaches because it's going to be imperfect. On the opposite side, I'm going to do the same, and I'm going to adjust one of the sides in a second. Doesn't matter which one, because we're going to be able to use symmetry if we want to. So in a second, we want to create this T. You can see that we want to basically create a double T because there's going to be two of them, and those are going to be held by some kind of extra elements around all of those objects. So how do we do that? Well, obviously we're going to be starting with the most primitive possible options. So okay, let's go for a simple detachment. So detach as clone, okay, and we're just going to continue clicking. To make sure that this object is going to be nicely connected, we're going to go for connect, okay, to perfect. Now we can also adjust some of the pinch in order to make sure that our T is going to make more sense. Again, we're going to go for the same technique, but this time we're going to be lowering the value. If you are lazy like me, you can actually skip deleting this part and just create a larger C, but just for the sake of consistency, let's delete those two elements and pretend that we cared. Now, shell, and let's just clear out the values. 15, okay, and the 15 is not needed. Convert this object to a editable poly, and we're going to be dragging it all the way to the opposite side. So again, it's nice and easy. Looking at it, it's going to be best to just move this to the effect pivot only, effect pivot, center to the object, and now we're going to be just moving this part a little bit. So the reason why I love using the vertex snap is that now I can lock my selection to the y-axis, move it by the vertex, and move it exactly where I need it. So instead of using symmetry, I can just move those lines as exactly where I needed them. And you can see that it was nice and easy for me all the way. So we also need those extra bars that are holding everything. So the easiest way of doing it is to double click, continue double clicking. It's very important to double click, but not too much. Okay, double click again, double click, and we're trying to select all of the edges that we're interested in. So pretty much that. So as long as we selected all of them, we're going to be able to create what we need. Create shape from selection. This is one of the most efficient tools in 3ds Max, really. Yes, creating splines out of your edges is just such an easy way of working with 3ds Max. And now to have full control, I'm going to go for rendering, enabling viewport, and we're just going to make sure that instead of radial objects, we're going to have rectangular objects, and we want to be smart with it, so we're just going to be making them a little bit larger. So here we now have something that covers our walls, but in some cases you might not be very happy with it, so you're going to be probably a little bit inclined on using actual properly prepared elements. But in my case, I'm going to be saving a little bit of your precious time by doing this the way I did, because again, it's going to be easier and faster, and the difference of 1 centimeter at the distance from the camera is not going to play a major role. So it's just easier to do it that way. But if you want to be precise, I do prefer, suggest you to use sweep modifier instead. Sweep modifier can pretty much allow you to create the angle, and that's pretty much going to be the end of it, as it's just going to be easier. I should have used the T here. Yeah, so let's continue, but without the sweep modifier, and possibly convert to a double poly. Perfect. And now we're going to be continuing. The video is example, okay. Monique, so thank you for asking. I'm doing well. I really miss the courses days. Oh, that's so nice of you. Well, what can we do when we have DWG files that are a mess? Too many layers, too many boxes, and all with no use for us. Spend hours to remove them? Mel, that's a good question. And if you could give me a second, I am going to look something up. So what I do use is this kind of software. Usually I go for a WG cleaner on any website. Typically it's going to be ScriptSpot, and the way this software works is super simple. It just makes all of the junk from the WG file disappear, and unfortunately I do think that you should have some kind of WG cleanup capabilities using proper software, G-Star CAD, AutoCAD, or any CAD software whatsoever, or just ask your client to clean it up for you, because a lot of times you're going to have 10 versions of the same object, but you only need to work with this one. So essentially you need to delete all the rest. So it's always going to be a bit of junk, but to make it super easy, first clean it up a little bit or cut out what you need in AutoCAD, create a new file, save it that way, and then once you're there, you're going to be able to just clean it up in 3ds Max. So that's going to be efficient. And working with those files in 3ds Max can be a bit overwhelming, so I do not recommend that. Okay, so let's convert this object to editable poly. And in my case, what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to try. Sir, can you do how to create realistic V-Ray material? I mean, we could. You know what? I just figured something. Those edges are really looking good, but I just figured another thing that I could do because it's a box. So give me a second. I'm just going to quickly recreate this up until this point, up until this point. Sorry for actually changing this method, but I just figured that it's going to be fun and educational for you to also use one extra option. So let's attach this, and now we've got those edges, right? So to have a little bit of fun and save a bit of time, we can go for select edges on the chamfer. Okay, chamfer like that. And because of that, I'm going to be able to add this. Make sure to the length and depth is going to be set to your need. In my case, it's going to be 0. Oh, 3ds Max. Yeah, 1, and let's make this approximately 8 centimeters because that's going to look good. And in my case, I want to make sure that I'm going to be using chamfer, but not the smooth the end. I'm sorry, not the. Wait a second. Yeah, this option. So we're going to be reverse chamfering or deleting the what is not chamfered, so it's a little bit easier. And then we can convert this object to editable poly. And yeah, I'm a dummy. You might have not noticed that, but I'm a dummy and I didn't apply the option yet, and I already converted the object to editable poly. Shell it to make sure that it's going to be approximately 1 centimeter, so that's going to be easier, straighten corners, and we've got it. So sorry for changing my mind, but I figured that it's going to be easier that way. So now we're going to be copying this one edge, so let's just Control Shift. You know what, we need more of them actually to create more of those elements. So we're going to repeat the process, but we're going to make it so that I've actually prepared this slightly differently, but now during this webinar, I've figured out that it's going to be easier to do it this way, as we're going to have a little bit different level of control. So just purge the file in AutoCAD before importing them in 3ds Max. I mean, purging is good, but sometimes it just doesn't do what it's supposed to. So it's not the golden standard, I would say. So in this case, let's go for, again, 8 centimeters, 6 probably, 4, yeah, 4 looks nice. We're going to be clicking here, and we are again in a clear. So to add this on top of it, we're going to be adding that extra shell modifier, and we're good to go. So now we've created all of the detail, and now we're going to be continuing building our interior. So we need the ceiling, we need the beams, and we need to start adding the props. So the props are typically going to be downloaded from Chaos, so it's going to be way easier for us to set up everything. I want to set a camera as well, so we can test if we made some major mistakes so far. So let's go here, we'll see. Okay, let's Shift F. So Shift F turns on the save frame. So save frame is going to allow you to pretty much look through the window exactly of what you're going to be rendering. The proportions I'm using are 1080 by 1650, so it's going to be slightly easier that way. So again, we're going to be adjusting our camera up until we're satisfied with the view. I think this is going to look more or less close to what we need. I mean, probably not, but yeah, mine is a little bit too dynamic, so I'm going to be able to change it later if I need to. But now we're going to move on to the next step, where we can start our first render for a second to just test if we made some major mistakes on the model. I kind of want to have a little bit of fun now. So first, we're going to go for material override. That's a very important element. Here, we're going to be clicking Corona material. And now denoising is probably best to be left unchecked. But if you're going to be rendering this, we're going to be going for Corona high quality, as every other rendering, denoising is going to be slightly more blurry. Some of them are faster for simpler models, but definitely not more precise. Okay, preserve. We're going to be preserving our materials bump, and we're going to be preserving glass materials just for funsies. Let's see how far did we get so far. Okay, so sir, can you okay, material just purge. Okay, how do you switch our frame mode directly from shaded view, the shortcut key? That's F3 and F4. F4 activates the frames inside of your shaded, and F3 is going to be switching between the wireframe and the shaded material. Hope that this helps. Okay, now let's continue, because now we kind of need the furniture inside. And for the furniture, I'm going to be using some of the furniture that is available in the furniture assets in here, so we can just browse that together. But long story short, I want to make sure that I'm not going to be holding you for next 8 hours. So in that case, we can just share some of those models with you with the files that we're going to be giving out later. So I might want to look into Camila's image to see what I missed out. So we need the detail here. That's going to be a nice one and an easy one added. We also need all the furniture. So I want to show you how to do this. This piece of furniture is just a box. That's a bench, so nothing special. Oh, I'm going to show you how to do this vent, because that part is actually something that you're going to be needing. And there are two techniques that I like using for this type of objects. Doing great, Mike. Don't stress yourself. The webinar is a pleasure to watch. Thank you very much. But still, I don't want to make this an 8-hour video. So let's go ahead and make sure to first go and check out how big do we need this cylinder to be. Pretty much radius of 50 centimeter is going to be perfect, so I'm already loving it. So let's make sure to go for that, and we're good. Radius around 25 in our main value. Height, let's set it to something around something longer. 600 is going to be probably the best. Sides, make sure that it's at least 32, but probably you can go for a higher number if you're going to do a high resolution image. But cap segments, depending the height segments, depending on what you're going to be doing, you want to keep it to 1 or very, very dense. So depending on how you're going to be reacting, or how are you going to be acting, or well, what you're going to be doing with the pipe. Let's continue. So we got this pipe, its radius is 25, so we're going to be going to another very cool thing, shapes, and here it's the helix. So we select helix, go ahead, and voila, we've got the spaghettios, and we're going to be continuing. So what's next? Radius 25 by 25. The reason why I made sure that the object is on 0 is so that I can type in 0 by 0 and by 0. So all of the objects are now working really nice. And because we're consistent, we're going to be also able to add the height of 600. And now the fun begins. because we're going to be adding turns. So woo, that's going to be pretty much enough for me. Okay, let's change the rectangular to radial, because that way it's going to be a little bit smoother. And now you can see that we pretty much created the pipe of our dreams. But let's make sure that the thickness is bigger, so it's easier to spot the detail. Convert the object to a editable poly. And now we're going to be also adding this as an attachment. So we don't want to have any problems with the model if you just decide to, at random, to have some kind of additional detail there. So we can delete the caps. In my case, I'm not going to be adding turbo smooth, but if I would be, I would have two options here. So I can go back, add turbo smooth, and you're going to see that the top is now looking a little bit funny. To avoid making it look funny, we can go by smoothing groups, and it's still going to be straight up, and it's going to be quite nice. So the reason why we made sure that the reason why I've added so many edges is to just show you how nice this technique is, because now I can create some kind of let's say line, a pipe, or whatever I want. And if I'm going to be placing a lot of those objects on my vents, ceilings, and whatever I want, I can just change it in a second. So let's make sure that now it's going to be easy to follow. So here I've got this object. The very base of it is at the bottom. It's placed so that the Z value goes up. So it's going to be already perfectly set up. So path deform is the next step. We go for path deform, none, and click on that. Look at that. We just made a beautiful pipe. We auto stretch it, and voila. If you're going to be very precise with what you're doing and you're not going to be adding random numbers, you can also add array before the path deform, but I probably should be saving this file for a second, because if we added the array before that and we have perfectly calculated our pipe, it's going to be actually quite cool, because now we're going to, yeah, wait a second, let's make sure that this is set to 1. Come on, 1. Let's turbo smooth off, because I'm streaming and my computer is a little bit sweaty, not as me. So now we can pretty much, if I would be more precise, I would be able to make sure that all of them are aligned, and I can create infinity pipes as I please. So it's going to be nice and easy, and this is pretty much an interactive model now, because I can continue building with it, and all I need to do is make sure that either I'm cutting it at the right angle or adding a little bit of palette, because we want those pipes to actually have some possible usability in our scenes. And that's, I hope, is going to be helpful to you, but none of that is going to be helpful to me right now. So we're just going to leave it be. So let's delete those modifiers and delete that shape. But I hope that, again, it's going to be something that you're going to be able to use. I use it, for example, to modify my couches or some kind of windows. A lot of that is really possible with this modifier. So 90, okay, let's put it closer to here. I think we're good to go. Definitely too big. So let's lower that a bit. Look at that. It's in the right position. Wait a second. Where is it? Did I lie? Where's the top? What's going on? There was supposed to be the vent. Okay, I lied. I guess I did. What's going on? Anyway, we're supposed to have it there, but now I see that the original image doesn't have it. It's here. Okay, so I guess I got two versions of the same render. Now the ceiling. The ceiling, you can see that there are some planks, there are some nice beams, and those beams do look worn out. So we're going to be making those in a second, since we're closer to the ceiling anyway. By the way, guys, just to save a little time, please allow me to copy a few lamps, because this is going to be just cylinders, and at this point it's not going to give you any additional knowledge. If you want a nice tutorial on how to create very cool interactive lights, please make sure to visit our YouTube channel, which is where you're watching me partially, but some of you are also on our Facebook group. Now, what I wanted to do here, I wanted to create the beams, right? So we need at least one beam to get us started. But if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to be creating this on the wall. So how do we create our beam on the wall to start it exactly where I need it? Well, I can Alt-Q to hide everything I didn't need, box, auto grid, and holding Alt, I'm going to, Control, I'm going to be able to create a nice box to just go all the way from top to bottom. And now it pretty much reaches out from one slide to another. And because we do kind of have that floor plan, I can now use it as well. So let's make sure to change from clay to default shading, and let's see where those beams are supposed to be. So first beam is here, and it's a little bit smaller. Okay, so let's make sure that it's going to actually follow up. So unfortunately, for some reason, we cannot lock those values, but it's not going to be bothering me. So let's make sure that it's higher, taller, and now we're going to be either arraying those, or we can just continue copying the object. But I believe that going for array is the best thing you can do in such situations. So let's go ahead and change the offset to minus something. Again, I don't want to be too precise with all of the beams because that's going to be a little bit ridiculous. Let's make sure to eyeball this so it's going to fit what we need. Number 6 is going to be nice. Hello everyone, which script do you suggest to copy paste elements between 3ds Max files? Pedro, I would recommend you copy 2, literally copy 2 script. This was free at, at a few years ago, and I still bought the paid version since they updated just to say thank you. But Copy 2 is a really good software, and it's very reliable. The script is just stupidly simple. Copy 2, and now a file is going to be created on your C drive. So C, it's in a temporary, and here you've got the clipboard. That's it, and that's how easy that script is. So I use it a lot. I do use it a lot. Okay, so the reason why I went through all of this trouble with array is to now add subdivide modifier. Subdivide is going to create random, seemingly random geometry on our object, but it's definitely far from random. So before that, we can also use chamfer to add a little bit of smoothness to our object. Make sure that the chamfer is possibly set to no smoothness or just a smooth chamfers only, so it's going to be still a beam and not a cylinder. So chamfer, yet again, let's make sure that the amount is set to something around 6, segments 2, subdivide and subdivisions are going to be automatically adding a little bit more geometry in between the elements. You can change it to adaptive to pretty much just mess up your model. It's going to be a good thing to do for some models, but in this case, I'm going to be using the regular adaptive and lower the value to something around 25 or even lower 15 to make sure that the geometry is nice and nicely densely packed. And on top of that, I'm going to be adding noise modifier. So the noise modifier is the most important of them all in this case, because I'm just going to be adding a slight 3 by 3 by 3 value. And the trick is that right now the beams are pretty much waving the same way. But since we've added all of that on top of our array, if we lower it, we're going to be able to break the pattern a little bit, and each beam is going to have a slightly more natural looks to it. If we go for fractal, it's going to follow up with more of that. Am I lying? Oh, that's weird. This shouldn't look the way it does. Please see. Okay, so this we're going to have to work a little bit more with the scale, and from what I can see, the array is probably causing this. So this is weird. No, it's actually getting the symmetry. Yeah, it drops the symmetry. Okay, I was just wrong in the beginning, so now it's working the way I want it. So now we got those customly made beams, and if we want to, we can detach one of them to manipulate it further. And thanks to the fact that array also has a couple of options in its sleeves, because we can also add some world rotation and scaling onto our objects, we can pretty much add a bit of incremental rotation, for example, on one of the axes. So it's going to change the beams slightly, but in my case, I don't need to do this because the noise already works very nicely. So for that, we're going to just make sure that the we're going to be continuing the way we are, and we're just going to be added poly after array. Sounds good to me. So, but it's not going to make any difference if I recall correctly, because that is pretty much the global modifier scale that is causing this, and because the scale is repeating, that is why we're getting the grid to do its thing. So if we look at the modifiers grid, you can see that this the reason why it's happening is the grid not getting enough space. So we would have to just change the gizmo instead to make sure that those are going to be more uniquely deformed, but it's still going to have some deformations repeat. So it's all about the scale and well, it being a little bit out of place. So that is why we're not going to ever get the appropriate result. So okay, well, let's copy this again, move it somewhere around here. Perfect. And now we're going to be going for 2x2 modifier to just shrink it, but before the noise. So it's going to be shorter, and we're not going to have any objects poking through our scene because that's going to just look bad. Okay, added poly. Hello everyone, which script do you okay, thank you. Okay, let's continue. So now we're pretty much in the clear. We've got the vent that I hidden. Okay, let's put this higher, so almost 420. This is going to go lower. Perfect. And now we're close to the ceiling. So let's make sure that we are looking at this from the right angle. Okay, so this is almost at the ceiling. This is at the ceiling. Perfect. And this is supposed to be slightly lower, so we're not going to be intersecting those two. Okay, now I'm satisfied with what we've got. What's going on? Oh, that's the grid from the auto grid, because I've used Control and Alt. You're a handsome man. Thanks for that tutorial. Yuki, are you that Yuki that was our student, or this is somebody else? Because that is also a very random thing to hear, but I appreciate that. Thank you. That is something nice to hear, really. Especially if you're a narcissistic like I am. No, I'm joking, but honestly, thank you. Let's continue. And now we've got a couple of objects that we need to start adding materials to. A cool trick is to pretty much add Control A everything that doesn't have any material to just add the gray as a let's say global color, because now I no longer need a material override, and I'm going to be able to start adding materials, and there are no random colors poking in my scene. But then again, there's a random color for some reason on the ceiling, because the ceiling was already frozen at the very beginning of my webinar. So let's select it separately, and now we're going to be continuing. Time Prophet, how are you? Pale Vizacademy UK would be here earlier, but I'm formatting a 4 terabyte drive. That's wow, that's something. So now let's start our rendering. So again, this is a small trick to not use material override, because now I'm allowed to use the materials that I want. And since we've already have a little bit of floor, it's going to be just a pleasure. Still, we're lacking the furniture. So as I mentioned, we're going to be able to copy some of the furniture, and because I feel like it's going to be unfair to not give you some of it, because it's going to take more than 5 seconds to build it, I think we're going to be, first of all, copying some of the lights, which aren't necessarily that important here, but I don't want to necessarily... Oh, I know what I'm going to do for you guys. first of all, let's build the bench at the back, because that's going to be something educational, as we're going to explore one tool that was recently added to Corona, and I think not a lot of people use that. So, okay, let's just add a bench, and that's going to be 80 centimeters compared to editable poly. And just, well, we're going to be editing this by random. The fact is that right now I've made sure that this object is going to be created on 0. So it's already saving me time, because I know that I'm working in a predictable environment, and I know exactly what's going to, where the elements are going to be. So please remember that having predictability in 3ds Max is absolutely important. So, okay, we've got this bench, right? So what I'm going to do is add shelves on top of it, but the sitting area is supposed to be around 40-ish centimeters, and then, you know what, 38, and we can add some kind of pillows around here in a second. But now let's create the shelves. So shelf number 1, to the let's set it to object. Okay, so this is going to be going somewhere around 200 centimeters, but we're going to be able to just put it somewhere where we like it. So pretty much, let's go for 210. So we actually have some values here added. And now we're going to be creating 3 copies up until we reach our ceiling. So pretty much array would be a very good choice here, but I guess this is going to be good enough. Okay, shell modifier, again, let's go for 3 centimeters, because this is going to be a thick element, and we need all of those elements together. So now I need one large box that's going to be pseudo holding all of those shelves. So those are not going to be necessarily welded to the wall. So yes, or screwed actually. I'm just using 3ds a little bit too much 3ds Max, and everything is welded now. So okay, let's place it here. I don't want those to melt with one another. Perfect. And now we need more boxes like this, but I want them to be this kind of wings that we have in this beautiful shot by our students. So let's make sure to go to the chaos modeling. Yes, this is modeling for chaos. Welcome. Okay, so I want to do all of that. We're obviously going to be using very similar techniques that we did so far, but this was a huge problem in the past, where you weren't necessarily able to even do randomization in 3ds Max without really using scripts and referring to some kind of additional software, or just was absolutely ridiculous. And I want to use the tool that is now added to Corona. So let's make sure to make it nice and thick. So let's make this a little bit thicker. Perfect. And let's copy it a couple of times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and up until we get to the 0.6. Okay, 7. This looks nice. If you can hear some weird tippy-tappies, it's Render, the dog, trying to get some attention, but right now you only have my undivided attention, so you win against him. So let's continue. Render. Okay, he got a little bit calm now, so let's 2 by 2 that. Z value, perfect. I know, you probably just figured out 10 extra versions of how you could do it better, but bear with me, this is going to be worth it. So, okay. Now we've got all of those nice elements, and we kind of want to randomize them. So how do we randomize this? Because you know that this looks awful. First of all, we're going to be adding the same method. Chamfer goes first, then we're going to be adding a little bit of chamfers only. We go for subdivide, so we're going to get more geometry, very consistent size, 12 because it remembers the last settings, and noise to just randomize it further, so we're going to go for 2 by 2, 2 by 2, 2 by 2, and possibly I can skip the Z value in this case, so we're just going to get some of that. You can see now that all of the planks look more natural thanks to that, because they're going to be planks, and we want to further randomize all of those objects. So all of those modifiers are pretty much a nice preset. So I'm going to copy this, but now we're going to take one of the scene randomization tools in Corona that again, nobody uses for some selection randomization, no, transform randomization. So this is cool. This is cool. I love it because it works. So we're going to be randomizing this object in the Z value. So if you want to check what axis you are supposed to be using, make sure to select the tool that you're going to be applying, change it to local, and just check what axis you can work with. If this happens to you the same way as it did to me, because no object really rotated, you can change the pivot to just work with each individual object. And now you can see that all of them are nicely rotated. Okay, but if you're going to be adding some kind of mapping to your object, please do it at this point, because you will be randomizing your objects, and adding your UVW map later is going to be stupid. So box 250, 250, 250. So now I'm going to be able to just take care of this map regardless of what I'm going to be doing to the object. Okay, so now we're going to be randomizing the Z value, and we want to go for -30 plus 30. And now preview it, and that is absolutely amazing, because now we can just play around with all of the elements that we want. Scaling, and I'm going to be scaling the object, let's say -15%. Let's preview that. And again, the objects are now by random smaller. I can just make sure that those are going to be bigger or smaller depending on the axis I'm going to be choosing. And this is absolutely amazing, because again, I'm allowing myself to get more randomized, more natural objects in the scene. And you know what? Let's further rotate it. Perfecto. And perfecto again. If you don't like what you see, you can just play around with the seed a little bit and apply it, and we're done. This is something that I found to be mind-blowing once I've discovered it, because it's really cool. It just allows you to get so much freedom in 3ds Max. Again, it's probably not as groundbreaking, because a lot of people can just rotate objects, but imagine that you've got hundreds of books or some kind of objects that just need to be further randomized, and you don't have the power to go through it. So how often do you guys do streams for free lessons like this? Yuki, we have one webinar each week, but we're probably going to be skipping one next week, and we also do reviews. But Yuki, if you're, let's say, learning right now, you might be very tempted to join Chaos Campus. Chaos Campus is a part of Chaos Initiative that is also, let's say, on Facebook, where you can join a group, exchange knowledge, ask questions, get a little bit of support. It's always going to be a very nice place to start. There's more than just me from Vizacademy. There's also Theodore from Heldor Studio that has its own program. I believe that this is the only group that I know that has a dedicated live show that's going to be on almost each week. And Theodore is really doing a lot during those streams. So you kind of want to join it, because he's reviewing your work and giving you a lot of really nice tips, and this is something you're getting for free, so you should take advantage of it. Okay, let's add some extras to the bench. Now the benchy is also more natural, and I love it because again, we're just doing it for free. It's just so easy to do all of that stuff. Okay, so let's continue. Will this webinar be uploaded to YouTube later? It's already uploaded. So the same link that you're watching right now will transform into, let's say, a regular video once we're done with the webinar. Have a nice stream. Thank you. Could you use double-sided sticky tape? Yeah. How often do you guys? Okay. How long does Corona take to render a dog? Okay, that's a good question. I'm going to now use my trump card and show you my favorite photo of my dog, because it's a live stream. I'm going to be absolutely not professional, but this is the favorite photo of my dog. Just went on to the to sit in a pot because that's the only green thing that he could find, and he wanted to go out, and this is the way he went out. He didn't do any business in it, but he just likes to sit on green things. So that's the best dog ever. So yeah, let's continue. He actually climbed the window to get to there. Yeah, probably not that interesting, but it was funny for me. So we're going to copy a few elements from this area. So let's move them slightly to this position. Okay, and copy, move them lower. So this is going to be the base for all the furniture that we're going to be adding here. So his name is Render. When will you have a rendering streams? I mean, this is one. We're pretty much getting to the point where we will be rendering. I mean, if you want to watch me leaving my computer to render like this, and now you're going to be able to watch how the render is being performed, we can do that as well if this is something you could be interested in. But for now, we're talking, we're learning, we're getting to the point where we will be applying some materials. Okay, I think we're really doing it slower than I expected because, well, me. So we're going to be copying some of the elements that we're going to be also able to get from the chaos library. So furniture. This is going to be, for example, chairs. So we can start downloading chairs and applying them into our scene, because that's pretty much what we are supposed to do anyway in most of those cases. I'm just going to steal a couple of objects that we not necessarily want to model right now, but yeah, we're going to take some kind of table. You can see that the beauty of 3ds Max is that if you're going to go for super simple shapes and elements, it's going to be rewarding if you're going to create good materials on it, because if the material is good, the rest is going to follow. Corona Vire, definitely Corona. Okay. By the way, guys, keep the questions coming. This is going to help me stay more active. Hello, everyone, which script? Okay. My name is Katya. I'm doing exterior with your tutorial, and I wanted to say a huge thank you for the job you are doing. You are a great teacher. Do you have courses for more advanced students? Yes, Katya. If you visit our website, that's Vizacademy UK, you can learn all about our offer, but today we're doing this for free for chaos, so let's not get into that too far. But Vizacademy is our website, Vizacademy UK. Okay, so let's continue. And I must say that I'm surprised that you haven't picked that up from the webinar itself. Okay, so let's try to grab a a restaurant table. And this table, and I'm going to show you, you know what, I really don't want to model all of that small objects, all of those small objects, so I hope that you're going to forgive me that we're going to be copying those props. Those are just bottles and glasses, so there's nothing exciting about this. This furniture piece, if anybody needs it, leave a comment. I'm going to be able to supplement you with this exact model if you want it. And the details here are pretty much the same as we did a second ago, so I'm just going to continue copying the elements to save a bit of time. Okay, I'm going to describe the decals that were in the air in a second, but let's just copy those objects. Sorry for this. I know that it's a little bit unfair to copy elements from that scene, but I really want to speed things up, because small objects don't need to be modeled all together. So copying. This is how I use copy to script. It's so easy to use, and now I'm going to just take this in. Okay, let's zoom out a little bit to make sure that we're in the clear, and paste from, apply duplicates, rename, and let's wait for it to just load in. And we've got the objects. Okay, look at that. The scene is supposed to be rotated by 90 degrees. So let's change it from local to view. And I want to move this whole thing together. So we're going to act as a group. Okay, this was rotated the wrong way, so we need to rotate it that way. Okay, now we're going to be saving a little bit of your time, guys. And again, this is just a furniture piece that's made out of wood, so there's nothing special about it. So I believe that we're not losing anything. But some of you did ask in the comments on our Instagram how to make this specific lamp, and I'm going to show you a step-by-step process of it, and I'm going to be also showing you how to do those chairs, because those are actually more interesting. I've got a serious I'm serious. How important is an architecture degree to land a job in ArchViz interior design? It's not important at all. You only need to have basic knowledge on how to read the floor plans, and essentially you kind of have to be aware of what is what, because some of the, let's say, some of the markings might not be just clear enough at first glance. But this is not something that you need any degree for. So this is pretty much going to be, well, spend a couple of minutes to learn how the drawings are made. What does it mean to have a red dot? What does it mean to have a red wall, etc. It's going to be just very simple things that you just don't know because you haven't had any experience with that. Once you know it, it's simple and you can continue. Do you need any architectural experience, degree, or knowledge? Well, not exactly, as long as you're not going to be designing. If you're going to be designing, at that point, you kind of want to have some knowledge because you don't want any elements to fall on somebody's head, right? But in the end, if you're going to be doing visuals, as you noticed, I am not necessarily going through any kind of OSHA guidelines, placing those beams and elements in by random, and I'm not really going to be adding any glue to them. So in that case, nobody is going to die because of your ArchViz. So definitely all you need is a good portfolio, and good portfolio is something you can create on your own or during some courses, or maybe you can spend a little time working for somebody building your portfolio at their company. But to get hired, you still need to have a specific skill set. I hope that nobody's going to be mad at me, but again, if you're going to join a course like ours, Vizacademy, we're going to be preparing you to land a job, to get a little bit of, let's say, general knowledge on how architects, or what architects expect from ArchViz artists. And pretty much this is going to be straight up just your way to get your first job. There's a lot of our students that landed jobs that I just didn't realize that existed with very nice benefits. But honestly, it's all about your portfolio. Experience is secondary. Portfolio is the first thing you need to have. Nice pictures. Experience is going to be helpful, but with all the honesty, nobody is looking at it. Certificates are also very helpful, so getting some kind of certificate is going to be cool. But again, it's going to be important as soon as you're going to be looking at the larger companies. Larger companies, I mean like big companies, big studios. Smaller studios are always going to be looking at your portfolio and who you really are. If you're nice to talk with, you're going to be nice to do business with. Because my rule is that I just don't do any business with people that I don't like. I mean, I do if they pay too much, but it's not something that I would be necessarily, let's say, that I wouldn't be necessarily happy to work with somebody that I don't like. I hope that this makes sense. Okay. Hello, Mike. Thanks for taking your time to teach us. Tutti sends a hello to Render. Oh my God, that's so nice, Claudia. So I need to see your dog at some point. Maybe. I'm going to install a dog cam. As soon as I'm going to be updating this cam, I'm going to get a dog cam, and he's going to be always right here. So if anybody mentions him, there's going to be a second camera because at this point, it's just necessary. This is not something I want. This is just something I need. Okay, jokes aside, let's create this super simple box because it has those very nice chamfers around it. So we're going to be now exploring booleans, because for both of those objects, and what we're going to be able to use for the most part is the booleans. So let's just get into it. So the first thing I'm going to try to do is I would faint from all the n-gons in that model. I mean, yes, but how about not caring about it? Because all of those n-gons are not going to be turbo smooth, and we can make it quad perfect. And this model is going to be super easy to do. So what we want to do is add enough geometry for us to work with. 32, 64, something around that. 64 because we're live streaming, so let's just show off. We're going to be lowering the amount of segments to just make sure that we're done with it. Because this is something we're going to be sitting on, we're going to be going for 43, 45 centimeters, and the radius is secondary at the moment, but you can see that the top is pretty much quite small, but this is mostly due to the fact that it's going to be chamfered in a second. So let's add an even more radius, so pretty much all the way outside that area. Okay, so since we're here, we're going to be adding chamfers. Again, chamfers. Convert this object to editable poly, just like that, and we're going to be adding selecting those two edges. Please notice that I do have the polygon selected, but my polygons do not display in this mode. Why? Because I pressed F2. F2 is going to make sure that your polygons are going to be displayed almost as if they were edges. This helps greatly with a lot of models, so this is just a free knowledge for you, like all of this video. So let's go to edge, chamfer a little bit, and we're going to be chamfering all the way. Probably we want to keep this in mind that we want to make this nice and cozy. So let's add a couple of extra edges. So this is going to be enough. And now we're going to have some fun. How are we going to have some fun in 3ds Max, you ask me? Well, it's going to come down to using boxes. Boxes are always good to work with. So first thing I'm going to be doing is adding a little bit of width. So, okay. Length, perfect, and let's place it so that we're going to be cutting it somewhere around this edge. Okay, I really overdid it with the chamfer, I really did. So we're probably going to go back a notch, or not. You know what? I'm going to continue, I'm going to be consistent. Let's just go ahead and cut it the way I want it. It doesn't have to be the same, I guess. So now we're going to be making sure that the length is here, effective it only, and we're going to be moving it somewhere around here. Again, I'm going to be copying this 4 times because I want this to be somewhat symmetrical, but I'm not going to be caring about it that much. And now we're going to be just adding what we want to the model. So here we're going to go for a Boolean, and we're going to be applying some subtraction. So subtract first one, second one, third, and fourth one. Oh my God, I really messed it up. Okay, I messed it up. Let's convert this object to editable poly still, and we're going to be working with this slightly differently, because now I can fix this by going to FFD 2x2 modifier and just make sure to move it slightly lower. That was really bad. Let's convert this object to editable poly yet again to annoy the time prop it a little bit more, because we're working with so many n-gons, and again, it's only for the sake of saving a little bit of time. I know that for game dev or for animation, this would be a travesty. I accept that, but I don't care. I'm here to save a little bit of my own time and yours in the process. Let's make sure to clear this smoothing group all together, so clear all, and let's make sure that this is going to be nice and now flat. So let's flatten this, and look at that. We've just made a very similar chair that I kind of had to manipulate. Oh, let's change. Let's go here. Okay, now we are back, and we pretty much did the same-ish thing, I guess. Yeah, I'm going to assume that we did everything correctly and I did not fail, so let's continue. Strangely, I always start with a box and turbo smooth to make a sphere. It gives a great topology. It does, but the thing is that you're really going to be caring about the topology. We can retopologize everything and make all of that really into nice topology, because this is not to just, let's say, prove my point or just to show off, but I could just model this in a little bit a more intelligent manner to give us a bit better topology. All the way it could be just easy, because again, it's all about just figuring out all of the details that we're going to be dealing with within our model. Or we could just make this so that it's going to be just easy. And if easy makes the model work and it's going to be still looking good, I'm always going to go for easy, because that's just better. In most of the cases, people will think that to be a professional, you have to absolutely follow all of the professional tips and tricks. And the only people that really care about professional topology are typically jerks. And I don't want to call you specifically, Time Prophet. You're not a jerk. But the thing is that people that care about those things are typically not very efficient, and they only do that to make your life a little bit harder. But if you're going to be working within some company, they will always say that, yeah, as long as it looks good, move on. We have 5 more clients waiting outside the door, so please make sure to hurry up. This is the regular way your clients are going to think about stuff like this. Vladimir, hello, I wanted to ask you, when is the next class starting? You mean the training or our next webinar? Because next webinar is going to be in 2 weeks, but our next class is starting around 13th of May. So if you want to join our next group, just make sure to join it just after the May break. Yeah, it's going to be possibly each time. I'm really going to I'm not supposed to talk as much as about our school during those webinars, but I must admit that this time the training is going to be yet again better than the last time, because not only our school got a little bit better, but also we got more and better videos than ever. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff going on in Vizacademy, and yeah, you're welcome to check it out. How long does the course last? It's currently it's 7 weeks, but we're optimizing it slightly to make this a better experience for you guys. So it's going to be cut to 6 weeks, but it's going to be packed with more knowledge, and we're going to be skipping the elements that we found to be, let's say, easier to skip, or let's say we change the techniques to some elements, and honestly, it's going to give our students a huge boost. So in that case, we're planning on sticking to 7 weeks for a while, because we're testing how the experience works, because we just don't want to test it on our students. We just want to slowly check which element works or which one doesn't. Once we get to that point where we can cut corners, we will. But right now we're optimizing the training, so it's going to be one of those experiences where you join in and you're just happy about it. Is it self-learning, or do you lecture a group live? So it's 3 things really. So, but we're going to be changing topic right after I answer you, okay? So we have 3 webinars per week. So this is going to where I review your work. So it's not necessarily self-learning, because you're going to not only get webinar where I'm going to be able to talk to you, just like we're doing it right now. Plus, we're going to be reviewing your progress, but on top of that, you're going to get a bunch of videos that will help you do the homework that we asked you to. But because we don't want to leave you hanging if you're going to have some questions and waiting just for the lesson to ask a couple of questions that blocked you, we're also going to be giving you access to our live support, where you will be able to ask as many questions as you need if you're going to be stuck, or you don't understand something, or you just want to expand your knowledge and go beyond the regular curriculum. So that's pretty much how it works. So hope that this answers your question. I really don't want to talk too much about Vizacademy right now. I mean, I'd like to, but I think it's going to be better to, just keep it, let's say, at bay. Now let's continue now. By the way, we just built most of the stuff that we wanted. I copied a couple of elements, but I still need to add the detail in the windows, right? So details in the windows are going to be super simple to add, but still I do see some occasional questions, especially about this scene, how one or two details in it were done. So this time I'm going to be answering this and hope that this helps you guys to pretty much move on to more exciting adventures than just building something so simple. So we can use two techniques for that. We either could use have to form an array or just simple box an array, or we can use floor generator. And I'm going to be using floor generator as it's a very reliable tool. And in sense reliable, I mean it's very reliable with when you want to crash your 3ds Max. Is the best software you can think of, but it still works. So I'm going to select those two polygons, and because I want to keep this again beginner friendly, we're going to take this step by step. So first select one polygon, detach it as clone, detach as clone, perfect. And this one, maybe if we're going to be moving camera, but yeah, let's do it because why not? Okay, so I've selected those three polygons. Now, the essential part here is that we need those polygons to be separate because those are supposed to be absolutely individual polygons. Because if we're going to be working with an object that's three-dimensional and not necessarily two-dimensional, we're going to crash 3ds Max. So make sure that you are working with, first of all, objects that are absolutely separate and simple. Simple as flat. So no boxes, no cylinders, no nothing for floor generator, or you're going to crash your 3ds Max. So floor generator, fingers crossed that I don't have any rogue topology, and we're going to be able to add that element. Never be afraid of perfection because you'll never encounter it. So do not waste time and just make it look good. Make it happen, Captain. Keep it up. You are doing great. Thank you, Art. That's really nice of you. And yes, my favorite quote, on the other hand, is not about perfection itself, but it's more about art. And that one really, well, it works for me because art is never finished, it is only abandoned. And this is something really, really cool because whenever you will be working on some project, you're definitely going to run into an issue where you kind of want to add that extra one element that you kind of don't need to. So yes, you're always going to run into situations where you're just not going to be fully satisfied with your own art, but that just means that you're ambitious and you should never just render, come on. You should never ever try to strive for perfection because you're never going to meet it unless you look into mirror, and that's pretty much where you can get it. But jokes aside, let's continue and now, as you can see, I've talked a lot, but this was surprisingly easy, right? And thanks to the fact that we've actually added the floor generator, we had the ability to not pay too much attention or not focus too much on details, or we have the flexibility that comes with this object. And this was one of the shortcuts that I didn't want to use for the sub. Come on. Okay, let's just continue. Thank you. 3 objects selected. So 2x2 modifier because I'm super lazy. Let's make sure that it fits the window. So, okay. There's a random arrow on my screen. Let's delete that, and now we don't have it. Okay. I guess my mirror is broken in this case. Well, get a new one. That's going to be a good idea. Now, let's see. I'm also sure that it's not that bad. Come on. Keep it on one axis and don't move rogue vertices, and it should work 100% of the time. I always say for floor generator. Great work so far. Thank you, Kirli, and that's highly appreciated. Yes, keeping it as flat as possible is a good idea, but intersecting vertices or random vertices can do a lot. And you know, you never know if you haven't made a mistake along the way during a live stream. So it's a little bit scary to have those small issues along the way. Okay, I think we're going to be cutting a few more corners, so I'm going to be stealing more elements from the scene from my student. I would like to remind you that this is work by Camila, so thank you so much for giving us this chance to look into your scene, which was created during our training. Regardless, it's a nice thing that you did send it to us, because now we can create this beautiful, I hope, useful webinar for you guys. So, guys, please a little bit of an appreciation for Camila. She's the great mastermind behind this scene. So let's make sure to copy a little bit more. I'm stealing more. Yes. So, okay, what else do I steal? Okay, I'm going to be perfectly stealing that. You know what? I'm going to steal the camera because, yeah, it's going to be cool. Now, okay, I think we've got most of the stuff that I wanted to steal anyway. So now we're going to be... Oh my god, look at that. She forgot to add a table there. Not good, not good. By the way, guys, any questions? Any questions so far? Really, everything is super clear. I hope that it is, but I would like to give you some more info if you need that. Sir, what are your thoughts about Turkish architecture? Aiden, I don't have necessarily any kind of big thoughts about it, because when I was in Turkey, I really did appreciate how it looks like, but this is something that I would have to go a little bit deeper into to understand the essence of it. So generally, I like the way it looks like, but if you would show me a couple of images, I wouldn't be able to pinpoint the exact one which is Turkish, because I'm just not that knowledgeable in the topic. At the same time, I'd like to point out that you guys have an absolutely amazing place to live in, and it's very cool to see all of your flags, how you are, let's say, proud of being Turkish, and that's actually quite cool to see, because not a lot of countries do that today. And by the way, speaking of architecture, I actually went to a couple of companies that sell marble in Turkey, and just to, because there's like a quarry for marble in almost every larger town somewhere out there, and marble out there in your place is absolutely amazing. That is one thing that I like, because there's a lot of marble all over the place. That's one thing I love about it. Do objects imported in 3ds Max from Quixel or Chaos typically have quad mesh topology, or can they also have triangular topology? So that's a question mostly to Quixel, but most of those models will be strictly triangular. Why they are triangular? Because those models are mostly created via photo scans, and typically the software is not going to be that good with topology, and optimizing some of the very fine edges on topology like that is going to be a bad idea. On top of that, Quixel is mostly designed for to work with Unreal Engine, and Unreal Engine, because it uses nanite, it really does the same thing to your model. It triangulates it, as all game engine does. So in that case, is it bad to have a triangulation on your model? No. Is it bad for animation? In most cases, yes. But it is also good to have the, let's say, triangulation that you planned in order to have the right bending on your models. So in some cases it's good, in some cases it's bad, but most of the models from Quixel will be triangulated. Moreover, do they usually have come with pre-existing UVW maps? Yes, most of them do. For formats like FBX and OBJ, yes. So in that case, that's certain that those models are definitely going to be mapped, unless they use some kind of generic mapping for maps that are more how to call it, seamless. Okay. I walked by some this morning. I think there is a lot of spires in Turkish architecture. Istanbul is amazing. I haven't been there yet, but I must say that my spouse who lived in Istanbul, and she has very fond memories of it. So I would say that definitely this is one of the places that I will be visiting at some point. I've been to Turkey, but I've only visited one place in it, and I regret that it was only that one place because not everything about it was fine. Bodrum in Turkey. It's great place, it's beautiful place, but I had some, let's say, not so pleasant experience in some pubs, but nothing serious. It's just that this is not something I am that fond of in places like that. Regardless, it wasn't that bad, so let's not make this a big deal because that's not the point here. So targeted, let's turn off the target and let's fix this. Let's fix that slightly. Okay, now we're look at that, we're almost done. Time flies. So let's continue. By the way, guys, sometimes when you set up your camera, you're going to notice that some elements are going to be slightly shifting. If they do, please make sure to reactivate or deactivate your tilt shift correction, because sometimes it's going to be just a little bit funny. Have you ever used Unreal or Unity for rendering and real life walkthroughs? Yes, I did. I played with 5D render, I worked with Twinmotion, I worked with Unreal, I worked with now my brain is getting foggy because of Unity. Sorry, Unity. I also tried out a couple of smaller programs. I also tried the game engine that was stopped, but it was created by Autodesk. That was my big plan to use it the most. But in this case, it's not something that it was discontinued. So I'm going to be testing the Vantage, and I'm going to be also testing the Enscape at some point, but you know, there's a lot of stuff on our agenda, but I'm going to be making webinars on those programs at some point. So yeah, that's something I want to also have a little bit of a chat with you guys. Do you use that floor generator for the tiles? Do you use that? Yes, I did use floor generator for the tiles at the bottom. Thanks. Have you ever used? Okay, do you use that floor? How are you, Vladimir? Okay, guys. Sir, can you share the free 3D modeling website? So one of the best 3D models websites is probably going to be 3D Sky. It allows you to download 3 models per day, but also you can visit Great Catalog, which is coming with absolutely amazing software, and I love it a lot, so that would be great. But really, just use Chaos Cosmos. It has plenty of fantastic models that you can use and abuse until you're going to be bored with it. Okay, wait a second. I guess mirror. Okay, most of the Megascans elements models are triangular. Most of them are working well in Unreal Engine, but there is a need for tweaking in order to make them look good in 2ds Max, as good as they do in Unreal Engine. I beg to differ. I mean, in 3ds Max, those models look just as good as they do in Unreal Engine. The tweaking never really is about models. It's mostly going to be about materials, because each rendering engine is going to use the values in roughness, bump, displacement a little bit differently. By the way, guys, those of you that use Unreal, does Unreal Engine already have a texture randomization? If it does, I'm going to try to learn a little bit more of it. That was a big no-no for me. I just stopped using Unreal Engine altogether once I learned that it doesn't have randomization, because for me, randomization is one of the most important aspects of my scene creation. So if without it, I'm just out. So 2x2, let's move it below. I can't, so we're just going to be moving this like this. Okay, I think it's time to start adding a few nice textures and few nice materials to our object. Before we get there, I'm going to once again try to pre-prepare my lighting for a second. So we're going to be able to get to that point by simply actually activating material override, and we're going to test what we can do with our lighting to keep it simple but also make it better. So let's go to post tone mapping. I'm going to pop up the exposure to something around 2, instantly better. I'm also going to be leaving contrast around 1.5, so it's going to be easier for me to get the higher contrasts. ACOT stays, and we're going to be activating vignette. So vignette is going to be something around 0.6, but you can go all the way up until you're reaching 1. But for me, 0.6 is going to be a really nice value. Okay, so the lighting mostly is done, but we're going to be also changing 2 things, because what I don't like about this particular image is that at the moment we're pretty much going to have a bit of bad time just looking at it with the colors that we see. There's a lot of blue, and I don't want to shift my temperature because that's going to change everything about the materials that I'm going to be setting up. And I want to use textures as they are provided, so I don't want to abuse the system by changing and filtering everything to fit to one another. In that case, I want to make sure that my light is going to be as neutral as I can. So for that, I'm going to create Corona Sky in Material Editor. Here, we're going to be jumping to Corona Color Correction, and again, we're going to be just jumping from here to desaturation. Typically, I'm going to be desaturating my Azure Eyes or any kind of sky map to something around 60-ish%. What is good or a nice trick would be to also make sure to go for Corona and enable clouds if you want to have a little bit of extra fun, because now we're going to have a totally different read of our scene. It's first of all going to appear as if it would be a slightly brighter one. Okay, I lied because I didn't even copy this map yet, so let's make sure to add the map in a proper way. So let's go to scene, a little bit lower, and now I'm going to be dropping the new map just like this. Voila! Instance. And what you can see is that the scene appears to be brighter, but what we really did is we took away blue that in our mind is going to be darker tone, although it's not. It's just that the saturation was taken away. What's your opinion on V-Ray? V-Ray is great, but it's more complicated than Corona, and in most of the cases it's going to be a little bit harder to learn, but it's not a lower quality software. It's just that the reward of using it is going to come a little bit later than with Corona. Okay. Nope. Which rendering engine do you use? Okay, I use Corona, obviously. Do you use do your course follows a final Autodesk exam? No, we don't have any final exam because our training is, again, you were not supposed to ask about that. Okay, so you got me. So the thing is that we do not have that exam because our training is so complex and it's mostly about architecture. So it's a totally different theme, to be honest. But no, we don't have it. Okay, bloomy and glary. Let's turn it on. The lighting is looking really good. I like it already, so we're going to move on to the next step, which is our materials. So let's start with our elements that are the biggest parts of our scene. So the first part we're going to be working with is this gigantic wall. In the reference, it's quite pinky-ish. So we're going to try to do exactly that in our case. So let's go to the chaos modeling. I want to see the reference once again, but the real reference. So we need this to be pinkish, reddish wall. We need nice planky looking texture, but we need to randomize it nicely. We need a nice texture that's going to be representing our bricks, and we need to create some kind of material for all of the wooden elements, plus concrete and some kind of scratches, details. A lot of that is going to be important. Let's start with this wall because that part is going to be the most important. So in this case, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to make sure to Control A everything. Make sure that my object is going to be set to material ID 1. Why? Because I'm going to be changing this specific one wall to ID number 2. So for that, I'm going to be Alt Qing and just zooming out to make sure that this wall is going to be my material ID 2. And this wall specifically is going to be left unchecked, so we're not going to be doing anything to it, but I'm going to be showing you something that will help you get your scenes to look a little bit better in a second. So, okay, the first thing we're going to be doing is the materials. So I want to keep this simple as always. Textures that I'm going to be using are provided by Vizacademy during the training. So there's no catch with it. I'm going to be showing you what type of textures I'm using, and I'm going to be showing you the chains that I'm using. So there's no need for you to panic that suddenly you cannot do anything. It's just that I do have those textures, so I'm going to be using them, but you can find very similar textures all over the internet. So the first texture we're going to be using is a typical wall plaster texture, so it's going to be simple, and we're going to be making something nice out of it. So to make sure that I can use this texture as an addition to my wall and not necessarily something that's going to be the most important part, I'm just going to be first setting up the color here. So in my case, I want to make sure that I go back to my camera for a second, and we're going to be playing around with the color itself. Again, there's already a lot of colors in the scene, so not every color is going to be consistent if we're going to keep it this way. But it's going to be easier for me to at least add the color and notice that a lot of color bleed is happening in the scene. So color bleed happens when you have a very strong color and it's going to be reflecting off your walls or any other object. There's a way to completely mitigate this effect, but we're not going to be doing that because in this case, what we're going to be doing later is going to pretty much just save us a ton of time. So how do we use this texture? In my case, I can do two things. Either just plug it in and change this to make sure that it's going to be applied, but you can see that kind of looks weird. So I'm going to be using 3 chains. First of all, it's going to be randomization chain. So this is going to be corona mapping randomization. In my case, it's always going to be set to -1, 1, -1, 1, -1, 1, mesh element instance. So that it's going to be easy. 360 in rotation, so there's no repetition. And because I don't want to necessarily work with any kind of UVW mapping, I want to keep that for the tiles or the bricks, I could just use the Corona 3-planar map, but that's going to be a bit overcomplicating the stuff. So let's make sure to add actual UVW map to our object. So let's go slightly higher, okay. Deselect any kind of polygon, edge, or vertex selection, because otherwise the UVW map is going to be only applied to the certain element in your on your model. So again, to keep it simple, I'm just going to make sure to type in 255 250, 250, and 250. You can see that the wall is already looking amazing, but the color is not matching. So what can we do about it? One of the tricks you can use if you're only going to go for a very subtle amount is either use some kind of mixing or just ignore it and YOLO that part a little bit and change the base color to something around 5 or 10%. This is going to be pretty much mixing the colors. It's partially taking the texture and partially taking the color, but this is not going to be very good if you're really into that color. So instead, I'm going to go for the maps, then go to Corona, and we're going to be going for Corona Mix. In Corona Mix, we can apply both the color and our map. So let's just make sure to copy the color real quick. Please leave the recording of the video. I promise we will. Both, thanks for the lesson. Thank you, Daniel, for joining in. Really appreciate you coming in. So let's make sure to add this in. And now, instead of adding, we're going to be multiplying our texture. So this color is multiplied by the second one, and we're going to see that there's a little bit of detail in our wall, and we're already applying the color to it. So now I'm just going to take away some saturation of this texture, maybe a little bit of brightness, because I found it to be too bright. I'm not going to be precisely going for each and every tone. I hope that you can understand that because we're already on the clock. So let's make sure to make it nice and easy. Since I've already set up this map, I'm going to just copy the same setup, and I could use the additional outputs, but again, it's going to be needlessly complicated for this super simple setup. So now I'm just going to be adding a simple roughness map into my slot. So here, dirt, it's a simple black and white map that looks pretty much like this, something like that. You can just probably take a screenshot, and let's just continue because again, we're not going for super duper high resolution textures at the moment. We're just playing around. So you can see that now the texture is creating a very nice effect all over the place. We're getting a little bit different shades here and there because the reflection is doing its job. So for that, I'm going to be still lowering the reflection amount a little bit because walls aren't supposed to be that reflective in my case. So IOR set to 2, and we're going to be using the roughness of 0.6 or 0.65, and now we're going to be lowering the base roughness to something around 25-ish%. So we're not going to be using the whole map, just a little bit, because we want our effects to be subtle, and this is what we're getting. Okay, so our main wall material is done. Now I need to go to multi-sub object level, and we're going to be essentially using the same material as we did a second ago, but for the bricks. So to save a little bit of time, I'm going to be adding this material and stopping the rendering. So possibly you want to avoid rendering while playing with your materials, because that's going to be a bit of a problem in many cases. So now we're going to go for just a notch extra here. So now we're going to be continuing. So first texture we need to change is the main texture. So we're going to be loading that up. Again, brick texture, just type it in. You're going to find billions of textures. In that case, it's going to be super easy. So we don't need the mix any longer. So, and we no longer need the randomization for the bricks. Bricks do not like to be randomized for the most part, but what they do like to be done with them is color correction. In some cases, we're going to be slightly correcting the tones in them, so that's going to be helpful. And randomization stays here, and we're going to be adding another map, and this map is going to be either in displacement or in buff. So I want to go for just displacement because in this case, it's going to be easier for me to work with a nicer texture. Hello, what's your PC specs? My PC is now a little bit outdated, so I wouldn't be necessarily recommending my computer specs. I've got 64 gigabytes of RAM, Threadripper 2970WX, so those are the most important two components. But if I would be buying something, I would be probably and I would be looking for affordable performance, I would be looking into Intel 14900. This is the processor that one of my students actually gave me a tip on, and that's something that I'm really discussing with myself right now. I'm renovating my house, and it's really hard to not buy a new computer and instead get a better equipment into the house, which is not 3D Max related, but I kind of want to. So yeah, this is something that I struggle with right now. So yeah, definitely something that you can also consider. Okay, let's make sure to shift the color a little bit closer to the yellow, orangish color. Okay, hello render, how are you doing? How are you? Okay, no answer, I get that. Yeah, so let's continue. Now the colors are a little bit better and they're working with one another. Hi, how are you today? Mohammed, thank you very much for that question. Since you've been asking about textures in Unreal Engine, there is a 3D planner now, but you should check out this mapper as well. I will, thank you very much, Art. That's really appreciated. So now we pretty much created those elements. So there is not much difference between besides the higher price. Take a closer look on both benchmarks in details before you spend more than you'd like to. Just a side tip. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I'm really considering both at the moment, and guys, this is well, I was supposed to give you some knowledge, but now I'm also benefiting from it. So I guess this is we reached symbiosis. So guys, really appreciate that. Super cool of you to let me know a little bit on also. So super appreciate that. So okay, let's Alt Q this because I want to only create the stripes. Okay, because I need those in that place, and we are done. So okay, where are they? Okay, let's look at the reference because maybe I'm really doing something weird. Okay, so this is supposed to be nice and red. Perfect. I need better bricks than mine. The wood, okay, wooden material number 2. This is copied. We're going to create concrete. Okay, so perfect. We pretty much got all of that. So let's take a quick glance at our scene. So this is going to how it looks so far. Not bad, not bad. So let's continue. Slight desaturation from on the texture side is going to be needed, so minus 0.05 probably. That's going to do the trick because right now I think it was a little bit oversaturated. The Chaos Campus effect, learning from each other. That's exactly what we're here for, and I really appreciate that. And I'm really I'm really loving this. So let's continue. Now let's select all the beams and all of the wooden elements in our scene. So again, it's going to take a second, so I'd rather hide the walls and start selecting the wooden elements one by one because it's easier. Also, a tip from me to you guys, a lot of times you're going to be running into the same issue as I'm getting into right now. You've got your floor generator, your floor object, or any object whatsoever, and it gets in your way. So what you can do is one of the two very cool things. First of all, as I said at the very beginning, possibly put it on a layer. Those layers are coming from the students' scene that I've stolen objects from, so that's why you can see a little bit different languages. So now we're going to be adding floor, and we're going to be doing the trickety trick. First of all, we're going to be displaying our object as a box. That's going to change it entirely because now we are no longer going to have any of those lines in, but it's still going to be rendered the way we needed it. So it's easy to just select the elements and be done with it. It's just better and easier to do it that way. So I highly recommend you try it out. Okay, so now let's select this object, that object, and that object, and this object. I really should be working with layers at some point, especially since this is going to take a while to select. So let's put all of those in some kind of layer. So wood. Now that looks good. Let's hide what we selected so it's not going to be getting in our way. Now pick layer, wooden elements, and we've got it. So pretty much most of the wooden elements are now selected on that layer, so we can just hide and unhide them. So I'm just going to select, now select child nodes, and we're just going to be continuing our work. As I mentioned, the essence of wooden material is always going to be the mapping because there's no other way to work with it. So let's just make sure to make the mapping as simple as possible. But before we get into it, we're going to make sure to basically prepare the material that we're going to be mapping. And you guessed it, I'm just going to copy the same material yet again to keep it simple. So the trick to materials, to almost all wooden materials, is to keep them simple. And what you want to get your hands on first is a nice texture. Again, I'm going to be using one of the textures that I've got in my library. It can be anything, but preferably choose a wooden texture that's going to be seamless. So pretty much something like this is going to be a good idea. So let's just open up. Okay, color correction, we're leaving that, and we're going to be applying a couple of extra maps. Map number 1 is going to be our multi-map material. Why? Because we're going to be adding a little bit of randomization. Not a lot of it, just a dash. So saturation slightly changed. No, gamma mostly 0.5. Hue maybe 0.3 because that's going to be good. Mesh element instance, nothing else is needed, and change the item count from 1 to 2. Sorry, from 6 to 1. That's just my brain lag. And now, since we created this chain, we're going to be able to delete that chain because we no longer need it, and we no longer need the displacement for our bricks. So in that wood material. So we're just going to be copying this, inverting colors, and just desaturating this fully. Quickly go to the roughness and apply a bit more gamma. So it's going to be, less gamma to make sure that it's going to be nice and reflective in this manner. So let's go for 0.2. Oh, by the way, I forgot that right now I've reset the IOR. So let's make sure that the roughness is going to be set to something around 0.2. So that way I'm going to get the right values. So now this is going to work really well. You don't need to work with any base roughness values in here, but that's going to be just optional. But you can just manipulate your gamma for the material, and it's going to be just pretty much make sure that there's a little bit of that, let's say, a little bit of that fade or a little bit of that blur in most of the wood, unless it's polished, and it's going to be looking perfectly clear. So now let's go for this modifier, copy it. So that's UVW mapping. We're adding it on top of our beams. And now the creme de la creme, because those are all wooden elements. So let's just make sure that this material is already added. And now we can check what objects require additional mapping. As I said, we mapped those objects prior, so it's easier for us, but we still haven't mapped a lot of those parts, and you kind of want to do it as soon as possible. So let's cancel that. Okay, paste the modifier. Perfect. Let's rotate the mapping. So it's going to, from left to right. We don't have to care about details like this. It's just not going to be important. Here you can see that one thing is going to be a little bit obnoxious, and this is going to be texture tiling, which we're going to be fixing in a second. Then we're going to be just moving on and adding another map here. Perfect, by the instance. Okay. And we're going to be continuing by pasting this in as well. Make sure that the texture doesn't cut through and it actually goes along the wooden beams. So let's just rotate this, and this now looks way better because the texture goes from left to right, but we still will be forced to split those parts a little bit because otherwise we're going to be left with really bad mapping. So let's make sure that every aspect of the mapping is done here correctly. Perfect. And now so it goes well here but doesn't work there, so we need to make sure to kind of split this. Okay, let's select that. You know what, just to make this even easier for myself, I'm just going to attach that part, deselect everything, and now we can just apply our modifier just for the part. And here the F2 trick comes in handy. Go to the editable poly, F2, go to UVW mapping, and now we can just move our UVW mapping and make sure that it's going to be exactly what we need, and make it so that it's going to be going from left to right, and we're good to go. Convert the object to editable poly to bake in the current mapping, and we can Control I selection. And now we're going to be able to do the same for the rest of the model, because as I said, one of the sides wasn't perfect. Now it is, so we can just convert to editable poly, and we're good to go because now everything is correctly mapped. Super fast and simple, right? So okay, let's see how it works, how it looks like right now. Kind of need the walls, so let's unhide those walls. I'm really wondering why so few artists, especially in the ArchViz, are using the substance textures. They are perfect for the most cases, free to get and easy to use, and most of them are just looking awesome and giving you several great features. So the Substance Designer is just another very complicated software that you have to learn to start using, and that's the only reason why people don't use it. They don't want to learn. That's all. I'm one of those people because I am not that good at Substance Designer. I know only basics, and I know that it's very helpful, it's fast, and it's useful, but I just don't use it. It's just that I haven't found it that useful for me to really be able to to explain why should I spend another few evenings learning about software that I can live without. I know it's good. I am not saying it's not. It's just that most of the people do not need to learn 5 extra programs, and in ArchViz they do kind of focus on making sure that they select just a couple of programs. So if you're going to be using AutoCAD, you're going to be trying to skip learning additional software. So that would be SketchUp, AutoCAD, ArchiCAD, Revit, then it's 3ds Max or Blender. So at that point, you just don't have any mental space for additional software, especially if you're going to be an architect at that point or a designer. Plus, there are a few other reasons that people don't use that software, but we're not going to be getting into that. You do not have to learn anything new, just download the texture and use them right away in 3ds Max. You know what? I'm going to test that theory if it's actually useful, because probably it's not about the learning curve, then it's mostly about laziness. Yep, that's it. Or just Mike didn't yet explain the process, so maybe I'll be the first Mike to introduce it to our community. Okay, so let's make sure to make it dark. Okay, now we've got the beams, and let's see how that object looks like. Okay. Hello, what are your PC specs? Hi Mike, how are you doing today? Thank you, Mohammed. I think you've already asked that question, or that was a different Mohammed. Thanks for all of the effort. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Hanging lights are missing in your scene. Oh, thank you, thank you. We were supposed to make them. I'm going to show it how to make them real quickly. How can I reduce time render for Corona render animation, because I need it needs 6 hours to render just 3 seconds, although my settings are not high. Mustafa, the thing is that Corona is designed to work on a very high note, or let's say on a high level. So you're using Ferrari to drag a boulder, while possibly you need some kind of a different equipment, because if you're going for style and looks, you will be going for Corona because it delivers very high quality. But if you're going for, let's say, flexibility and speed, and you can trade off a little bit of that quality, that's when you want to look into rendering engines that are GPU based. So that's probably it. Okay, so now I'm going to show you something that I really love doing with my metals, because now you can see that most of the metals in the scene are very dark-ish. So what I can do to navigate myself into not hating this image is to add a clear coat layer that's going to be quite strong. So it's going to make all of those materials a little bit stronger. But first I need to change all of those materials into actual metallic materials. So we're going to take a step back and make sure that the darker elements are going to be metallic. So, okay. And let's make sure that we can work with slightly brighter colors. So we're getting more reflections. I need slightly more, but still I want to keep the dark appearance. So it's going to be metallic, but still very, very nice. Okay, that's exactly what I needed. A little bit more roughness, something around 0.5. It's going to be perfect for me. And now we're going to be applying the clear coat layer even stronger, because now I want to have a lot of roughness in that material. So that way I'm going to get a little bit of spray of that extra reflection on top of it, and it's going to introduce a lot of random reflections. Since right now some of the metallic elements aren't reflecting the way I wanted them, I'm going to be also introducing additional lights. To do that, what you can do is, first thing, create Corona light. That's going to be the first thing you typically want to do. Make sure that it's going to be rectangular or a disk. In my case, disk is going to work really well. Go to your top menu. By default, you're going to have a line and select place highlight. Go for place highlight and just start adding the highlights to your objects. Now, what you're going to notice is that as soon as I placed that highlight, and right now I'm looking at that image off screen, you're going to notice that there's a little bit of reflection, but possibly what happened is that the light is outside of the premises, so we're going to have to check that out, and it is. So I need to move it slightly closer to my object. If this happens and the object or the light is too far away, you want to go to local movement and move it closer to your object. That way you're going to be able to go back to your main render, and you can see that, yeah, I'm overburning everything, but let's turn off render. Sorry, render is a little bit, well, I don't know if you heard that, but he just said. Anyway, if we place the highlight is going to be exactly in the position that we chose, which is going to be very powerful because we can add all of the details that we want in the positions where we want it. So long story short, I'm going to turn off all of the options but the reflections. So now we're not going to be overburning anything unless we are literally in front of a beam like that. So we're just going to lower that, and this way we're going to skip the beam, and it's still going to be producing enough light to actually show us a bit more of the ceiling. But what we can also do instead is, instead of directly adding light there, we can force the reflection to also appear by making sure that there's going to be more light on the ceiling itself. This is a trick used by a lot of photographers that where you add a bit more light to the ceiling itself. So let's make sure that there's more of it with a little bit of directionality, not too much. 0.4, 0.5, and as soon as the same elements are going to be lit slightly, we're also going to be seeing a bit more reflection in the object, because right now, as you can see, we're pretty much forcing the reflections into our scene by basically making the object that is supposed to be reflective reflect the elements. Also, I think we're getting a little bit too deep of a T here, so I'm going to just make sure that it's not as deep, because a shallower object is going to be easier. Sir, there were okay. What is the render engine? Okay. Now you can see that we're getting more reflection and it's getting there. So I kind of need more reflection here. So I'm going to force it by also adding additional map, which is going to be just a general noise in the bump slot. So let's make sure to go through the whole thing, add the bump slot, and here by manipulating the structure of the object by going for something around 30. Let's make sure the base bump is going to be stronger. I'm going to be forcing this object to deform a little bit, and by deforming it, I'm reflecting more elements inside of the scene. So again, it's going to give me a little bit better reflections all over the place. And you can now see that we're slowly getting there to the point where they look really nicely. So let's move on to our floor, and we're going to be perfecting our background, but still I kind of want to add one thing. Let's desaturate our wooden elements even more, like that, and let's add a bit more gamma, so we're going to have a more worn out effect on our wooden elements as we go, and that looks really nice. I kind of want to have additional ceiling objects, so let's make sure that the ceiling itself is going to be selected for a second, and we're going to make sure to add the appropriate texture to itself. So let's go ahead and select our explorer. Mike, can we see render? I mean, I could, but it's hard to catch him right now. What is the render engine that is relying on GPU you can suggest into me to make me able to create animations with 3ds Max and Corona Renderer? So if you want to work with 3ds Max and Corona Renderer, you want to look into 5D Renderer, because it allows you to translate materials from Corona to that engine, if it's GPU based that you're looking for. Vantage is going to work like that in a couple of weeks probably, so you might want to also look into that. But long story short, it's mostly going to be just looking into your beautiful scene and checking out which of those engines is going to be suitable for you. Oh, by the way, I forgot that we were supposed to also change material map type, add the mapping randomization, keep old map of submap, and we're going to be adding just a simple mesh element, 1 and 1 randomization. So now the texture is going to be differently positioned on all of the beams, so it's going to be more interesting. I think that I'm going to have to talk to render for a second, because I feel like this guy is getting a little bit in our way. So let's continue going through the process. Okay, where is it? Guys, 3 seconds break to catch a little bit of water, and I'll be right back because we're online for a couple of minutes already, and I think we're going to just do a bit of a break. 5 minutes. Oh, 3 minutes. 2 minutes. Okay, so I caught him, but he's really not into staying with me right now because, well, reasons. So just wanted to, he just wanted to say hello. So, hello guys. Now, thank you very much. And yeah, that was the render the dog, and he's now trapped with me. So he's going to really enjoy it, enjoy the rest of his evening with us, because now there's no way out for him unless he's going to be a little bit too vocal. Oh yeah, I need to go let him out once. Okay, that guy is he's a little bit of a handful, but yeah, let's continue. So music depends on the scene completely and lighting condition. As music depends on the scene completely and lighting condition of the scene, I might take from 10 to 10 hours. Also, resolution is a big factor when rendering. Yeah, that's exactly it. So what does Lumion in animation is better for 5D render? Render is doing some real rendering. Okay, there's a lot of stuff. I got a little bit lost in a chat, so let's continue finishing our image because I believe that we're a little bit overdue. I'm going to show you how to build that lamp and probably floor and the elements, and we're going to be balancing out some of the materials in a second. So yeah, as I said, we need to create one more ceiling material, so that's going to be either wooden or we can just select another texture that's going to be pretending to be planks. I generally do not use textures like that because I feel like using floor generator is a better idea in most of the cases, but I do have quite a great texture to use to begin with, so I'm just going to go for that. It's just going to be easier for me, not necessarily for you, but it's definitely going to be a good idea regardless. And since it's just the ceiling, I'm going to avoid using any roughness maps because in this case it's just not going to be necessary at any point, so we're just going to be continuing as we go. As you probably noticed, I've also added a little bit of, okay, let's take away the roughness map. Let's go all the way to the rough town, and now we're going to be lowering the reflection a little bit, and we're continuing. So, serve wooden panel are reminding of the texture. Thank you very much for letting me know that actually is a valid thing to say. So let's make sure, yeah, it had to be annoying for you. Let's make sure to add those in. So thank you for letting me know. And now let's continue. Okay. Done. Now it looks so much better. Let's desaturate the image 0.05 just so it's going to be better. A little bit more exposure kicks in, but just a notch less. Okay, Perfect. Maybe a bit more contrast. Perfecto. And we're getting there. So now we need to make sure that this light is going to be shining the way we need. So slightly less light on the ceiling, just a little bit less. And now we can see that the planks are working with one another really nicely. So let's make sure to actually test if the you know what? I'm just going to make sure that the layers are deselected. So let's just go for the ceiling. Let's make sure that it's now selectable, and we need to add the UVW map, because without it, the map is looking a little bit far-fetched. So UVW map, let's go ahead and add it. Make sure to see it. Yeah, this is why it didn't look good. Yeah, so now we're going to be going for 300 by 300 by 300. In my case, it doesn't matter that much, but I just want to rotate it 90 degrees because it's going to fit nicely between the planks and all the rest. So now it's time for the floor and the objects on the floor itself. So in that case, we kind of need some kind of material, and I'm going to just see what material was created for this by the student, because I'll be honest, I forgot to test it. Oh my god. This is a bit complicated. So, let's examine if it's... Okay, it's not that complicated. It's actually good. So we're going to go for something similar, but we're going to do it on our own. And now we're going to just do the step-by-step process. First thing is obviously Corona physical material. So that's the easiest thing you can go for. And make sure to select all of the elements. And because I don't want to necessarily keep remapping them, I will be just adding one UVW map to all of them. And thanks to the fact that we're going to be mostly randomizing all the textures, it is going to look good. So Corona bitmap, and we're going to be adding our first map. This map is going to be either some kind of wood or dirt or some kind of concrete type of material. So in my case, I want to keep them very simple. So we're going to go for concrete, but because this is concrete-like material, I'm going to be also adding another map in here. So that's going to be our Corona. And a very important aspect of this whole shebang is to make sure that we also add a Corona AO. Corona AO is going to add a bit of those dirty edges. So let's lower that and make sure that the edges for a second will be red so everybody can see them. And we're going to be applying this material to our object, and we're going to be quickly checking out or manipulating those objects just to make sure that we are in the clear. I want to zoom in on those objects because obviously we want to keep in mind that right now we're mostly focusing on them. So 2D pan zoom mode, and we're just going to be looking at those objects. The lighting is actually looking amazing. So we need a bit of detail. First of all, the AO is way too big. So 100 is too much. Let's go for 5. How does it look? Nice, but not exactly what I needed. So we're going to be changing the outside to inside, because right now we're going to be adding a lot of edge trim around it. We don't need to add any color spread because that's going to be too strong and we're going to get just red edges. Possibly we can keep that, but I don't want to, so we're going to be making this absolutely neutral for us. Let's top up the value a little bit. 6 is looking fantastic. So now we need to make sure that the mapping is added. Unoccluded color is our main color of the object. So you can see that now all of those objects do appear to be slightly blocky, slightly more concrete, but I believe that the UVW mapping that I've added is a bit too big. 150 by 150 is going to probably fix this, and now you can see that the texture is more densely packed. It creates a lot of detail, so it's going to make my life much more easier. Going back to the discussion that we had about Corona round edges, this is where you want to use it, because base bump, maps, and Corona, we can go to Corona round edges and just apply it in. If we go for it here, we're going to be pretty much getting a bit of nicer, rounder edges. And I'm going to be showing you something extra ordinary in a second. So let's add a Corona maps, Corona color correction. That's going to be map number 1, and we plug it into our occluded color. Depending on what we want to achieve, we're either going to be adding a darker color, so we're going to have stronger edges around the object, or we can do the opposite and make this way brighter. So we're going to have a little bit of worn out edges depending on what we prefer. So we can manipulate both to increase the contrast, because now I can pretty much swap them if I want to. So let's lower this gamma, so it's going to be nice and dark. So the main element is nice and dark, and it really appears to be almost as if it would be metallic. So for that, I'm going to be also adding a little bit of roughness map in a second. And one map is going to be absolutely dealing with all of the nice elements that we need. So 0.3 to get that reflection that I wanted. That's perfect. And I'm not going to be making this exactly the same way, because that's beside the point of this webinar, but I want to make sure that it looks good. So we're going to be doing the dirt map trick. So 3-planar map, UV randomization, and some kind of dirt map. And we're going to be applying it all over the place. So first place where we added in is the radius map. So the radius map for our corner round edges is going to chip the edges so that those are going to be imperfect all over the place. Those are going to be very subtle. Next, we're going to be adding the same map to our base roughness. So now the roughness of the object is going to suggest that those are a little bit worn out. And in the end, we can also add the same map to our AO distance, which is essentially going to make sure that those edges, as you can see, are now working quite, looking quite cool. In order to make this texture a little bit more dominant, I'm going to lower its scale to something around 35. So we're going to have more chipped edges, and you can see how cool they look like. So now I'm going to be adding a few extra steps. So for example, let's add that color spread that I've took away. So it's going to be stronger around the edges, maybe even too strong at the moment. So 0.2. Quality for some reason is set to 2. Let's set it to 5, so it's going to be easier for me to see any detail. And now look at that, we've got fully randomized objects that are fully texture randomized, and every element just looks different. But I forgot to randomize this map, so I'm just going to make sure to add that one map randomization that we were missing. So UVW mapping, keep all the sub map, yes please. And now we're going to be adding this randomization by mesh element 2, 1, 2, 1. And this is going to be 360. Anybody wants to know how randomization works, let me know. Also, if we want to, we can swap the effect and literally just swap the two colors if we want to, depending on what you would prefer. Black, dark edges and brighter objects, or vice versa, up to you. I think both work really fantastic. And we're going to be doing very similar material for the floor. So both objects are going to be using this neat trick. But again, a layer explorer that is going to be here. So we're going to be using floor and floor 1. Both objects are important for us, but this material, although appears to be very complicated, it's super simple, because there's nothing that you should be afraid of. Just a texture, brighter, darker, AO map, so the shade, the randomization, and pretty much just roughness map, which is going to be whatever you want it to. So now let's copy this material, because we're going to be creating a very similar one for the floor itself, but possibly with a hint of blue, so it's going to be a bit more natural. And the fact that right now we're using a lot of randomization is the best thing ever. Okay, the roughness map is way too strong, so we're going to be changing that a lot, and our AO map is way too strong within the contrast boundaries. So we're going to be doing this element some favors as well. Let's lower the amount of base roughness that we're using to something around 15%. That way I'm going to have a very subtle effect on the object, and you can see that the subtle effect is now a little bit more dominant. Next thing that I'm going to be doing is swapping the colors yet again, because in this case I want this sorry, you know what, we're going to be lowering the AO version, and only the same object occludes. Okay, so it's going to be easier for me, and in this case I kind of want to, no, you know what, I'm going to be going for outside, and now we're going to have a bit better edges, because the edges are going to be around the geometry, and you can see that it looks really nice. It doesn't, I kind of don't like it as the way it is right now, but okay. Oh, the reason why it is like that is that we didn't add any mapping to the object. So box, let's go for 250, 250, 250 on the floor. 3ds Max is really unresponsive with the forest pack. Any tips using forest pack? Make sure to change the display options to dots and try not to overwhelm your scene with adding all the objects at one layer and at once, because that's definitely going to be overwhelming your RAM, and at some point you're just going to get into a point where you just hate working with floor generator like that. So this is going to be something that you kind of want to experiment with a little bit, but mostly it's all about just keeping your scene uncluttered. So floor number 1, this object needs a bit higher shell, 0.9. So we're just going to give a 1 millimeter distance between the floor and no floor. So it's going to be just a glimpse. You can see that now it melts thanks to the corner around edges. I absolutely love corner around edges because it does this thing. It does its thing absolutely amazingly. Okay, so I like the effect, but I still not very keen on that floor. So we need to make sure that we're going to be using both colors a little bit lower darkness. So let's go for 0.3. Still too bright. Okay, 0.1, pretty much 1. Okay, now this is looking better. Nice, we're getting there. Okay, the last thing that I think we need to do is the lamp that I promised that we're going to be making, and we're going to be just examining the model itself, and then we're going to be copying the rest of them into our scene. So the most important aspect of this whole thing is slight amount of randomization, and again, it's going to be all about just making sure that we use clever tricks. So first, let's rotate it so it's going to be in the right position, and now you can see that it's almost like a squished sphere, but it's not exactly sphere. It's a different shape. It's a lathe modifier object. What's the difference between the free course and your paid course? So the free course, you're pretty much currently on it. We're just having a little bit of fun, and we're doing specific scenes, but when it comes to all of the let's say, when it comes to our full experience, you're going to be pretty much prepared for each and every step along the way. Before you see me click something, you're going to get a video on why we clicked that. Or pretty much that's the best explanation I can give you. So we need some kind of spherical object that's going to be nice and easy for us. We could use some kind of donut or other object, but I'm just going to go for a sphere and create something that's going to be similar size. There's a lot of detail here, so we need to make sure that we follow all of it. Now, the first thing I'm going to go for is FFD box, right? So here we can see that the box FFD is almost indistinguishable from regular from regular FFD. But what I want to do is set the number to 5 in length, not length, in width, I guess, but the sphere is rotated, so it's actually going to be yeah, that's it. This is going to be actually the height. So yeah, took me a while. So 5, and now we're going to be selecting those parts, and we're just going to be squishing it slightly, and then we're going to be selecting the rest, and we're going to be continuing to squish. So this way we're going to be able to change the regular sphere to something that's going to look more like an MMMs or Mentos. So we're creating a Mentos right now. So convert this object to a double poly, and we're going to be dealing with just half of this model at a time. So delete the other half because we kind of don't need it at the moment. Okay, and we could just squish this even further, but I don't want to. We're going to need 3 copies of the same sphere, so I'm going to be working with all of them in a second. So let's create the 3 copies, and we're going to be using them, as I said, in just a second. First one is going to be sliced, so we're going to be using some kind of boxes to slice it. The best way of slicing a box, slicing our object the way I want it, is to just make sure to create a box in the middle of it, like that. create then create a couple of more boxes, and making sure that we're going to have some distance between them. I'm not going to be super precise about it because I've noticed that our webinar is taking a little bit longer than anticipated, but I hope you can guys forgive me that. So now this is going to be our base. Did I make those into instances? If I forgot to do that, we're going to just roll with it. We're rolling with it. So now this is going to be our 25 degrees rotation object. So 25 to 30, that's perfect. And now 60, perfect. So pretty much what we needed. Now I'm going to be moving this to the second object, and you probably already guessed it. We're going to be using booleans on this one. So what are we going to do is to go for a boolean, and we're going to go for subtract and just start picking 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is going to create the main stripes. Because I did a little bit of an oopsie, I was supposed to make those boxes a little bit thicker, so we could also scale them up a little bit locally. So let's do that. Okay, R local. And now we're going to be making those a bit thicker. So we're going to be taking away a bit of the more object. So now the stripes between are going to be slightly smaller. Boolean, subtract 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to be repeating the process on the opposite box or opposite sphere. So, okay. Thank you very much to DS Max for auto-saving. Sir, you explained tirelessly, it has been almost 2 hours. It was more than 2 hours already, it's 3 hours. So, okay, let's go to Boolean. Okay, now I got used to it because some of our webinars with our students, because of the amount of questions that my students can ask, sometimes they take a while to finish, and that's why I'm kind of used to a longer experience like this. So now we've got the main element done, right? So what you also want to do is add a push modifier, just a millimeter. So one of the elements is going to be slightly higher than the other, or you can just add shell modifier if you want to, one innie, one outie. So that's going to be just easier. Okay, and then we're going to be using this element with just a bit of ingenuity, because we want to use this as our base, right? So pretty much that's going to allow us to create now the shapes in between. But how do we do those shapes? How do we make them? So the easiest way to do it is to create section, create the section object, and we're going to be just cutting it the way I'm doing it right now by rotating the object by approximately 60 degrees, as I did right now. You can see that it fits perfectly where we need it. And now all I need to do is position the same object or similar objects next to one another. So I'm going to just place it straight again. Make sure to copy it a couple of times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is going to be enough. Now we're going to be moving this with the 30 degrees that we wanted. Okay, perfect. And I'm just going to be creating the edges exactly where I want them. The first one bugged out. So we're just going to create a shape, cancel it out, and you know what? Why is it not manually update section? Come on. The first one got a little bit buggy, so I'm just going to not risk it and just move it away. Okay, copy. Why is it happening? Okay, so you want to play games. Let's continue. Now, what we're going to be doing is exactly the same thing for all of the openings. So let's go here and pretty much here as well. So this is going to be the 2 openings. But now we copy it and we do exactly the same thing as we did with the opposite thing, but we can also rotate it that way. So it's going to be it's also at the right angle, but the opposite side. So let's make this happen, please. Okay, the idea is that we're going to be hiding the elements that we don't need at the moment, because if we don't, it's just going to be creating more edges than we need. So let's hide this, hide that, and let's just hide selection. And now we're going to be selecting all of that and converting the elements to editable splines. So we've created a lot of splines in this area. We no longer need this button because it's just not needed. So we're deleting it, unhide all, and I've lost the model somewhere in the scene. So we're just going to be selecting this element yet again, and finally we're getting there. I forgot one last thing that we need from this model is to select that edge, create shape from selection, linear, and now we can delete it. So we're selecting all this. Okay, unhide all things, and we just created the same type of lamp that we seen in the scene before. So now I feel that I am allowed to just simply copy those that my student has created. I know that it's not identical, but the technique is pretty much the same. So we're just going to be creating that, and this is how you can create a very custom looking nice object like this. Okay, so let's move this, and if we add shell, as I mentioned, it's going to just pop on in front of all of those splines, and it's going to look absolutely amazing. Make sure to also do it for the opposite side if you're into that. But for now, I'm going to be deleting this. Hello, Adrian. Thank you. Pozdrowienia. Nice to have you. So okay, let's continue. There are two lights that we don't need in our scene. So finally, let's grab those lights and wrap this up because we're now finishing this scene. It only took us 3 hours. If I wouldn't be talking so much and answering your questions, honestly, this project would be taking me approximately 2 hours maximum because I would be drinking a lot of coffee in between. I mean, I would be taking breaks. Regardless, we need a background. Okay, you know what? Background is going to be something that we're going to be talking on a topic for a different webinar because I'm really done with today's webinar. I think you're going to be able to understand that. But we can copy it from the student scene and just pretend that we did it. So, okay, local, change to normal and move it in. By the way, we're getting there. Okay, perfecto. Got the lamps. Finally, we're going to just blatantly, guys, look away for a second. Look away. I'm not stealing anything from the student scene. No, I'm not. This background was always there. You know it. Okay, I didn't allow the model to copy. Save, paste. Now it's here. So we kind of need to rotate it by 90 degrees, the opposite side. We're going to YOLO it. Dang. Yeah, it's okay. Hi, Dr. Prestige. Okay, now. How do you like that? So the background really finishes up this image, and I know we can play around with details, add a few more props here and there, and probably I forgot about like 50,000 objects in this scene, but everything you learned so far is going to be probably helpful to you. And just a side note, guys, you can also make all of that detail pop up a little bit more with your bumps by adding additional bump for the floor and the elements that really are important in your scene. Before we get into the rendering, let's say, moment, I would like to give you a quick info for the preview renders. It's okay to have the noising, but honestly I do turn it off for realistic work because without it you're going to see details first and not blur. Although you can see that now we're getting a lot more noise, I also get a lot of more detail because it's not blurred out. At the same time, the scene high quality is going to be the right way of going for your scene. Pass limit, we don't use this unless you're going for animation. You're typically going to have to try to cut as many corners as you can to use pass limit because that's strictly for animation for me. Then we got time limit for when you have a meeting with your client in an hour and you have to render out 5 renders. So you just give all of them approximately 12 minutes to render, and you just hope for the best. Then you've got the noise limit, which is the one that you're going to be using for the most part whenever you will be working with your scenes. Let's lower the resolution so we pretend that we don't need to render this for a very long time. And Uma Costa Cuetenco. Sorry, I don't speak that language, and that's going to be probably one of those things that I cannot really reply to. Oh my god, there's a little bit more chat on Facebook, so I understand that you are doing it yourself and sometimes there's no way. Okay. Yep, substance designer. That's definitely going to be a bit of a problem. Why do you use Corona physical material? Is there any specific? So why do I use Corona physical material? Because Corona physical material currently is the standard for the industry. So that's the reason why I use it. But it's also a little bit better because it has dummy proofs. So for example, if you're going to change your material into metallic, you can no longer make it into a glass. So if, for example, I'm going to change this into metal, it cannot be glass because now it's metal, and that is a very, very powerful thing to have. I actually like this metallic floor. I'm keeping it. I don't care, I'm keeping it. Okay, so now going back to the question, physical is just going to give you a lot of dummy proofs, and it also has a lot of presets that I really use. Sir, I have to go, thank you. I also have to go, so it's going to be 5 minutes extra, and we're going to just finish up for today. So stop and let's start rendering this scene. Okay, hi guys, everyone. This is the week of a long webinars. For some, I might be too much, but I really appreciate it a lot. A lot of knowledge shared, and a lot of this is for free. Yes, it is, and I hope that everybody's going to like what we're doing here, and especially guys, please remember to visit Chaos Campus. This is the whole, this is the reason why we're doing this webinar, and Chaos invited us, and thanks to Theo taking care of all of this is really amazing because he's pretty much in the forefront of this whole action with his keeping this realistic. It's the Chaos Campus is the first, probably one of the not so many groups in the world that has a dedicated live shows in it weekly. So that's fantastic, guys. I think a lot of very good artists are talking on various topics. For example, Nico. There's a lot of webinars from Theodore. There's a lot of guys that go through the webinars. Ricardo, Carlos, all of those guys are amazing, and you should really join the Chaos Campus. But now the render is being rendered, so I'm going to just say that this is it for today. Remember to like and subscribe to on our YouTube, and make sure to leave a comment once the webinar is done. All of the resources that we're going to be sharing from this webinar will be hosted on our website in a couple of hours because I haven't yet got it. CG Architect podcast starts next week. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for letting me know. So guys, you have to tune into that because, well, you absolutely will love it. So now, going back to what I was saying, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure to leave a like, leave a comment, because it really greatly helps us. All of the resources are going to be available to you in a couple of hours on our website, possibly even tomorrow. What I would like to say next is just thank you for staying with me for so long. It was a blast. I had a lot of fun, a lot of cool conversations. Next time, I hope that we're going to have somebody in our chat answering some of the questions, like what's better, Corona and V-Ray? But honestly, I think we reached our goal and the render is really looking good. So this is it. I think that, thank you. Okay, nothing else can be said. Remember, I'm Mike from Vizacademy. Our website is Vizacademy Co. UK. This was a webinar by Chaos, and thank you once again. See you soon. Bye-bye. Oh, where do I click now?